1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
One thing about nicknames, you can never give yourself one. At the time, I suppose I would have asked Quentin where he got the name, but it doesn't matter. Somebody gave it me along the way and it stuck, you know. I don't have any. I try to avoid them. I don't have to explain it. You just gotta see the movie. That's it. I mean, the guy doesn't hide anything at all. I was totally submerged in who I was, in the character. And I was enjoying it. The guy was a nut. He was a nutbag. You have to believe you are the person or the thing or whatever the hell you're playing, and put the emotions and the feelings, or the lack of, into it. The nice guy is, he's emotional about his dad, but he can give two shits about much else, I mean, his guys, his dad, money, living high on the hog, and that's it. So you didn't care about anybody else. Oh, I'd probably like him if he liked me. I mean, I don't think I wouldn't want to have dinner with the guy if I was on his shit list, That'd be a problem. I was a nutbag, He'd shit in a heartbeat. Just think about him bad. He feels it. Kill you. Well, you've been selfish in your life, right? Well, just multiply that by about 1 billion. And there you go. It's nice clarity. Sweetheart. I was at the bottom. I needed Reservoir Dogs. And I read it and I said, this is all I need. I knew it from reading the script. It's all I need. And I'd be back up there doing movies. Quentin knew which part he wanted me to read for, and I read for it. I mean, I wanted it. So I just had fun, I just had fun with the character and the dialogue and the other guys. And there was a lot of ribbing, but I gotta be honest with you. Quentin hired a bunch of good actors. We had a good rehearsal time, and we were in such a hurry, we didn't have time to think about anything, or I didn't. I was just keeping up with the next shot. It was like real life. I mean, obviously we weren't killing each other, but it was just, really just trying to keep up. I'm kind of a slow worker anyway. I like to ease into stuff, and it is fast. It's like razor sharp, back and forth. That was like a ping pong game. And so that was new to me, but that was a challenge, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun. So I play a lot of slow talking, kind of more thinkers than talkers, and this was the first chance I had to play somebody who was just really quick-witted. So it was good. It was a challenge that changed me as an actor too. Eddie Bunker was a friend of mine for a while, for a long time, and Quentin, when he was casting it, I don't remember who the actor was. I'm glad, I wouldn't mention anyway. He was thinking about somebody, and I mentioned Eddie Bunker. I said, "Oh man, I love Straight Time. I love Runaway Train." And Eddie had wrote the screenplay for Runaway Train, and Straight Time was based on his book, sort of semi-autobiographical. And he's also been a witness to a lot of interesting lives. I mean, that's what a great writer does, basically. They've been around and they observe all the unbelievably interesting people there are out there. And Eddie's one of the best. So I mentioned Eddie, and Quentin goes, "Man, do you know him?" I said, "I'll get him on the phone right now." And I called Eddie, and Quentin said, "You want to be in this movie?" And Eddie said, "Yeah," and that was it. It was like that fast. He hadn't even met, he was already in. What the guy wore was inconsequential. Where he was coming from is what mattered. And that's kind of always been my way. I've never been a real guy who, that the wardrobe's got to be just perfect or this or that. They were doing the heist, dressed the same to be, so anybody that described him obviously would say, well, there's a guy in a black suit. Well, there's 50 guys in a black suit. We don't know which one. That was the idea behind the black suits. I wasn't on the heist. And you gotta remember, that movie was so low budget. It was like 900 grand we were doing the movie for. So it was like, if you brought your own stuff, great. Nike sponsors me, they give me free clothes. It's true. And Quentin liked it, and that was it. I mean, it wasn't like it was a big mental decision. It was actually almost how I dressed at the time, pathetically enough. I mean, don't bring the Joan Rivers out here to tell me how bad it was, but except the gold. I wore a lot less gold. I I pay so little attention to the camera when I act. I pay more attention to the camera now on an interview. When I act, I don't even know there's a camera there. Don't care. Makes no difference. If I'm out of focus or if out of light, it's not going to change my performance. And I don't ever pay attention. I pay attention now. Oh, my double chin's too big. Now, but not when I make movies, ever. It's not that violent. It's more violent. It's not that bloody or. It's not that violent. It's violent in nature, in behavior. I mean, it's obviously it's a gangster movie. It's not a movie about. It's not a love story. So yeah, it's violent, but it's not like it's not an ultra violent gangster movie. I mean, yeah, the ear and Tim laying there in a bath of blood, you know, but. That's not, see, acting. It's everybody's in each other's faces all the time, and the pressure of the situation, building until it goes to a boil. But it's really the pressure of the film. That's the thing Quentin did, you know. It's not really that violent. You do get typecast, and they'll offer you more money to play something you've done and been successful playing than they're going to offer you to play something that you're taking a risk playing. You know what? I take what they. I mean, I love actors. I mean, more power to them. They get to choose exactly what they want to play. I don't. So you have to balance movies that, you know, you may really want to do, and say, well, I'm doing this for nothing, and then do those things. Well, okay, I've done this a million times. I'll just try to do it different and do it. That's it. Good payday's nice.
Story you're gonna ask me about. Go ahead. I got a feeling. He's talked about it on fucking Letterman and every place else he can. Go ahead. No, but I'd never ridden in the trunk of a car. And it was like the one thing that I was curious about. What would it be like to climb or to be driven around that way and then to climb out? Michael was taking a nap in the back of the loft where we were working. And he probably didn't tell you about the part that he was napping in a sundress when I went and woke him up. And I said, I'd like to go for a ride in the trunk of your car. And he popped right up. And he said, sure, no problem, let's go. And I climbed in the car and we went for a ride around the block and I got out. The most valuable piece I got from it was, you know, it's completely dark and you got the red and white from the tail lights in there when he stops and goes. That's the only light you have in there when you're sitting in the trunk. And I'm in that god-awful polyester cop suit. I was sweating like a pig, and his version is that I got out all weepy, and I was like, oh, Michael, I don't know if I can do this. But as far as me getting out of the car crying, I don't think that was the case. And it was a long process. I auditioned 4 times for the film. I think I know there are a lot of other guys who did the same thing, and they really, it was such an ensemble cast, and it was so important to find the match between, you know, Joe and Nice Guy Eddie, and then how does Vic fit into there, and then how do you create a brotherhood between all these guys who don't know one another? You know, and that's gonna come from good acting and the connection that's created through that. You know, it's like shooting pool with somebody that's better than you are. You shoot better pool. And I think everyone in that film was so good that everyone just constantly through the whole film is just feeding off of one another. It was fun. It was fun. It's fun when you immerse yourself that much and you commit that much to the work that you're doing on a piece. And everybody in it did that. While we were at the table working on scenes, Michael would walk around the outside of the table and recite the entire script to Raging Bull. Did you fuck my wife? Did you fuck my wife? Did you fuck my wife? You know, so that was Michael's preparation. So it'd be interesting to hear Michael's slant on his preparation. I did sensory work, I had things that I was working on, I did emotional work and stuff from my life that I pull into my work and that I use that in my craft as an actor. Beginning to work with Michael, there was a tremendous amount of trust between us. Michael, at one point, had a hard time slapping me. At that point when he slaps me, I said, slap me, you know, I'm here with you, it's okay. You know, let go that way, and there was a connection and a trust between us that way. You don't go to the next step. You don't want to do that. You want to be in the moment and take things as they're fresh and as they're coming to you so that, you know, your reactions and your work is real and truthful. Quentin said to me, we don't have it in dialogue here. I want you to convince this guy to not light you on fire. And I knew that Michael had just had a child. At one point during the rehearsals, I came up with that line and I said, I got a kid now. And as soon as I said that, Michael stopped in his tracks. He just stopped, he turned to me, he turned to Quentin, he said, I don't want him to say it. And Quentin said, I like that, we're gonna keep it. And I had done what Quentin wanted me to do. And it's not a cheap shot. I mean, life, art, life, it doesn't matter, you know, and it was real in the moment and it stayed, and I think it's a very honest moment. This guy is doing everything that he can to get himself from being burned. Well, after one of my first days of shooting, I got in my car to go home and I turned on the radio and that was the song that was playing and it freaked me out. It was very trippy. We did it both ways. We did it with all of us being able to hear it and Michael dancing. There was one moment when they do that long shot of Michael then walking out to get the gas can and Tim and I were bobbing for a moment or two to the music while Michael was out getting the gas can and then came back in. I think we were off camera, but you know, so it was like a hoedown. There was a prosthetic. They actually had to, what's that stuff called, gaff quad or some stuff like that. It's like a glue, and they glued all my hair down on the side and then glued my hair down and then put a prosthetic piece over that, which is the wound. And then they glued an ear on top of that at one point. They had to find another kind of glue to create the tissue when the ear comes off in between that prosthetic and the ear, and then the hose being able to fit, and it was fucking endless. There was a guy just behind the chair at one point with a little bottle of blood with a tube going up my back and out underneath the prosthetic, and blood was squirting out of my ear, and that didn't make it in. And it's right that it didn't, because it's much more powerful and it's much more riveting and scary for you to be there with myself and Michael when the camera goes off to that doorway and you're left wondering what happens, and then Michael steps back into frame with the ear in his hand. I think that's more powerful than if you saw it. There were lots of different stories about how Reservoir Dogs was maybe going to be made. I had heard one that there was a Canadian entrepreneur that was ready to give them $1 million to make the movie, but he wanted his girlfriend to play Mr. Blonde. I'd rather have Michael cut my ear off than some chick, no offense.
Mr. Blonde is talked about before you see him, and you go, oh man, there he is, oh shit, he's here. It's not like I have to come in and start with any shenanigans. I just walk in and I'm the guy that everyone's been talking about. And I think that's part of the setup for some interesting characters. I mean, obviously. There was a theater in Los Angeles that it played, you know, every Saturday night at midnight. I went there once with Quentin and with Lawrence Tierney, and we sat in the back row and we watched the movie. And all the people that were in the theater, they knew all the dialogue, and they were speaking along with the characters and saying the dialogue. you know, like simultaneously with the guys in the movies. They knew some of the lines, you know, why do I have to be Mr. Pink, you know, and stuff like that, and, you know, I'm going to torture you anyway, and, you know, things like that, these standout kind of memory things, and I knew that the movie was good. I've always thought that it was, but I had never seen it with an audience before, and so it was kind of strange. It was kind of cool to see it that way. The guy from Reservoir Dogs will be on my tombstone. They won't even put my name. Unless I'm buried in England somewhere, then they would probably remember. They're really good to me over there. And I walk down the street, you know, like, fucking hell, it's Mr. Blonde. They really like me over there. You'd think Reservoir Dogs just came out yesterday. Well, you know, the fact of the matter is that, hey, Hud, say again?
This one.
Is that yours? Well, son, there's about 350 million toys in this house, and I have to be honest with you, I really, really couldn't tell you. If you say so, I'll back you up. That's Hud's. It's his. You have to back your sons up. You have to back your children up, because one day I'll be old and I'll need those boys to look after me. And I hope maybe one of them ends up liking me. Maybe that's why I've had so many. Maybe he'll remember that this day I told everyone that that toy was his, when it probably isn't. So they plot against each other. It's incredible. You know. Anyway, what was I talking about? I would have much rather have not been my demise. In fact, I think I probably tried to talk Quentin out of it. I think that's why I elongated my death scene so long. You know, because bang, 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 bang. And I wanted to bang against some caskets and knock them over and stuff. I remember that I think we were going to try to shoot it that way, and then we were really running out of time. We didn't have any time to do that movie. Much less time than one would imagine. I remember a little reluctance on his part to let me be halfway up on the garbage can and then to fall down. Anyway, I tried to elongate my demise scene by having that final moment where he goes boom. I would have made it go on forever if I could have, you know. But you never know. Maybe they could, you know, in the sequel I could be in the emergency room. Of course, Mr. Orange at that point would be dead, and he'd be gone. But I'd survive in the emergency room, yeah, because I didn't lose nearly that much blood. I'm sitting here looking at this book, and not only did I not know there was a book, but why is Tim on the cover? If you ask Tim, I think he's pretty sure that the movie is about Mr. Orange. He thinks it's about his character. Tim, you know, you're my dear friend, but it's not about Mr. Orange. So I developed this thing for birds, I don't know. And then we got a great big cockatoo. We had him for a long time. His name is Marvin. He's from Nebraska. He's a Cornhusker. We named him Marlin after Marlon Brando. Because Marlin's from Nebraska, you know, it's one of those things. An actor with a bird named Marlin, you know. It's kind of stupid, but kind of charming, actually. Yeah, he's a good bird, though. He's very tame. With me, he is. I can take him out and hold him like a baby and turn him upside down and everything. He's really cool, but he won't let anyone else do it. He'll attack them.
No.
He's an attack bird. Get him, Marlin. I was like the guy who never fit in. You know, I was the guy who didn't belong, you know. I was always like the one in school that the teacher would be like, you know, you know what I mean? And I'd be like, what, you know? I was, who the hell is she looking at, you know? I was the odd man out for some reason. And, oh, that's Sasko. He's my German Shepherd. He came from Germany. They flew him over on a jet. He has a tattoo inside of his ear and everything. Yeah, he's a good doggy. He's a good man. Sasko! I'm from Chicago. You know, I hadn't really done very much acting. I tried a little bit of theater. It didn't work out very well and didn't pay my bills by any stretch of the imagination. I had gone to New York for a while, and, you know, I was just banging around, and I was working at a gas station. I was fixing cars, and pumping a lot of gas, and I had been an orderly in a hospital. I had been a landscaper and painted garages. I had some ideas of being a policeman once upon a time, and I actually wanted to be a doctor, believe it or not, but I knew that I'd never make it through school, so that was, that wasn't meant to be, so that never happened. I was doing a lot of small, low-budget movies, and I had done a lot of episodic television, and mostly playing like the Hood. I was going to change my name to Michael Hood. When I was first becoming an actor, I thought it was a cool sounding name. Michael Hood, you know. I kicked around for a long time before I had ideas of being an actor, but I didn't really know if the situation was going to ever present itself, and so it kind of just, I don't know, now I'm stuck with it, so. In actuality, Mr. Blonde's car wasn't really, all you ever see of the car is the trunk. And in fact, it was my car. I had a '65 Cadillac. I had a yellow Coupe de Ville, which was my, get-around car anyway. And it wasn't in the budget for Mr. Blonde to have a car, so they used my car for that scene when I go to the car. Anyway, I was trying to figure out, what I was gonna do with this character. And I was actually, I was asleep on the floor in the production office, and the actor who plays the cop in the chair, he woke me up, and he said, Michael, I need you to do something for me as research on the character. And I was like, okay, man, what's that gonna be? And he said, I want to get in your trunk. And I said, what are you talking about, man? And he said, no, I want to get in the trunk of your car. He said, I've never been in anyone's trunk before, and I want to know what it feels like to be in the trunk. And so I said, yeah, okay, and we went outside, and then I kind of realized, I thought to myself, well, this is good research for me too, because now I got someone in my trunk, and he's dressed as a cop. Subconsciously, maybe it brings something to my character. So we went outside, and he got in the trunk, and Quentin was in the parking lot, as was Lawrence Bender, the producer, and they watched us depart. And what I was going to do was just go around the block and come back. As I got underway, I realized that there was something interesting going on, the dynamics of it, and so I turned on the radio, and I just started cruising around. And I went down an alley that was a lot of potholes in it, boom, 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 boom. And it got faster and faster, and I could hear Kirk back there, and he was banging on the thing, get me out of here, what the fuck's the matter with you, you crazy motherfucker, I had gone down this alley that was a lot longer than I anticipated, and as I got to the end of it, I had to swing back around to go back to the set. And when I went around the corner, there was a Taco Bell. So I went through, and he was, what the fuck are you doing? I got a taco, I got a Coke, and I got fries. Well, I didn't think any fries, but I don't want to make things up. And I had to turn the music up louder because I was afraid the people in Taco Bell were gonna call the cops on me or something. And because at that point in time, he was making a lot of racket, And there was a lot of junk in the trunk that had been flying around and banging him and stuff. Because let me tell you, the way he looked when I finally got back and opened the trunk was not at all the way he looked in the movie. But they should have used the take from when he first got out. Because it was a lot more realistic, because he was very sweaty and very pissed off. Cool is a hard word. I mean, that's a big tag, that cool thing. I don't think cool is an actable quality. I think it's one of those things that you either have it or you don't, and I think that coolness has kind of become a little bit bastardized. And there's been a lot of guys who have made tremendous careers out of playing cool characters that they haven't brought anything to it. I grew up in the days of Robert Mitchum and Kirk Douglas and Burt Lancaster and Lee Marvin. And one of my favorite lines in Reservoir Dogs is when I look at Harvey and I say, I bet you're a big Lee Marvin fan, aren't you? I think I'm a throwback to that time and those guys, and perhaps maybe that's why he cast me, I don't know. I'm not going to be remembered for Free Willy, put it that way. Or will I?
This is the sign that was hanging over our entrance to our offices, which are up on Hollywood Boulevard. Our offices cost us $500 a month, and I think that building actually tore it down. It's a museum piece now. I think the frame costs more than the whole budget of the movie. This is our first company that Quentin and I had for Reservoir Dogs. I made a little horror movie for $100,000 with a guy named Scott Spiegel. It was a great little, it all took place in the grocery store. And Scott Spiegel is the guy who introduced Quentin and I. Quentin and I are like a married couple, you know, we've been together a long time, and it's truly a case where 1 + 1 = more than 2. And we are moving along there, and both of us are struggling on our own. And somehow together we are able to do what each of us individually were not able to do. Sometimes we fight like a married couple. When Quentin wrote this script, he literally wrote it in 3.5 weeks. I'll never forget going over to his house, and he has this old typewriter, and he's started pecking away at it. It was pretty funny because it was all those bad spelling, and it was not, you know, it doesn't look like a script because it's not formatted, quote unquote, the way a script is supposed to be formatted. When he sort of pitched me the idea in my living room, he was telling me the story. You know, he said, you know, I just want to write this story, and it's about a bunch of guys. They pull a jewelry heist. They come back, at that point it was a garage. They come back to a garage, someone's been shot, someone's been killed, there's an undercover cop in the mix, you don't know who it is. I just, as he was telling me the story, I just knew we were off and running into something really great. That casting process was probably the best casting process I'll ever go through. We had so many groups of actors, so many great actors actually that came in. And it was really about putting together the right ensemble, the right group, the right chemistry. When that process was nearing its end out here, Harvey said, you know, we should go to New York and check out the New York actors. Well, Quentin and I were broke, you know. Quentin at that time didn't have a car. I'd pick him up, and, you know, where he'd take the bus, and I hadn't, you know, I was living in a 2-bedroom apartment with a roommate, and I didn't have money to go to New York. And so Harvey said, I'll tell you what, I'll fly you guys to New York. There'd be times when it'd be Quentin and me and Harvey in the room with an actor, and we would read 2 or 3 roles with each actor. We'd be in the room for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and for whatever reason, I got to be the cop sitting in the chair. And guys would bring in knives, and guys would bring in guns. A guy would go, here, gun, but see, look, it's not loaded. He said, sorry, no guns. He said, no, but look, it's not loaded. And we would get in, you know, guys would like get into, you know, the whole physical thing, and I get knocked over, and it was this very, it was like walking into a locker room. It was great, and see, that's where we cast Steve Buscemi. And actually Steve came in and gave an okay audition, not a bad audition, but not a great audition, but there's something about his energy. We go, this is the guy. And then later that night, Harvey took us out to the Russian tea room. Now, I'm from New York, but I was always broke. I never could afford to go into the Russian tea room. So all of a sudden I'm sitting in the Russian tea room with Harvey and Quentin. And at that point, I said to Harvey, I said, look, Harvey, you know, you've done so much. I think we should make you a co-producer in the movie. He said, Lawrence, you know, what took you so long? Yeah, I've been waiting for you to say this. You know, it's about time. I'll never forget, because we cast all day on Friday, and we took the red eye Friday night. So about 3 o'clock in the morning, we meet. You know, Harvey's in first class, we're in coach. And we meet in the middle, and Harvey goes, boys, you know, someday you'll be in first class. But right now, when it's on my dime, I'm in first, you're in coach. I'll never forget the first day. We always like to have a dinner. I mean, it's become a sort of a thing now, but we started on Reservoir Dogs, we like to have like a dinner with all the actors before we shoot. And we were all sitting around there, and it was me and Richard Gladstein, and I think Monte Hellman was there, but all the actors, Eddie and Michael Madsen and Chris Penn and Quentin and Buscemi and all these guys, and we were at Harvey's house, and people started talking about prison time. Everybody there had been in jail at one point or another, and Richard Gladstein and I looked at each other and go, "This is it. This is the movie. We're in the movie. It's great." Doing Reservoir Dogs, we were like doing everything for the first time, but somehow we were so, whatever we had done to that point in each of our lives to get to that point, we had all that potential energy that was waiting to get transferred into kinetic energy. It was just ready to go. And all my background came to play, all his background came to play, and we did everything we could to just make that a great movie. But you know, that's what everybody does. Everybody sets out to make a great movie. But you know, that was our first movie, so it's a very special movie. It's like having your first child or something like that, you know.
Actor. Don't do any of that stuff. Don't have to go and live in a hut in the tundra to play an accountant. If there's a technical aspect to a character that needs to be sorted out, then I will take care of that. But the rest of it, I just look at the script and ask the director questions. I used to do that. I used to do it when I was younger, because I thought you had to. Because De Niro did it, so all these actors, you know, would go out and sort of, you know, hang out with cops and get under their feet. But I never, I just thought this is all very silly. For me, it doesn't work. You know, I sort of just go on instincts. My agent sent it to me and said, have a look at this, and I just, you know, by the time I was halfway through it, I reaching for the phone, so I really want to do this. This is great stuff. And they hooked me up and had a meeting with them. I remember meeting with Quentin, and I think he was asking me to look. He said, "What do you think, Mr. Blonde or Mr. Pink?" At that time, and I wanted to play Mr. Orange because it was an acting job. Because it was not only an Englishman playing an American, but then it was the character was a cop playing a villain, so it was performance. And then he was actually the good guy. Which was an interesting departure. He was, but within that world, he was the bad guy. So it's all, you know, kind of multi-layered, which I liked. I liked that character. It's deceit. I used to have to audition when you first start. You do, and if I figured out I was losing 50% of the jobs by auditioning, and the other 50% I was getting, so I figured, well, screw it. I'll stop reading, because it's a horrible thing that people have to go through, actors have to go through. So I just put an end to it. And after I got a few films under my belt, I thought, well, they can just go and have a look at them. If they like them, they can hire me. If they don't, then they don't. And I meet with them. I meet with directors. I love meeting directors, but but just the auditioning thing, I just don't want to have to go through that anymore. But it's true, I don't do it. I still don't do it. Brian Cox asked me to do a read-through of a film that he's trying to get off the ground the other day, and I said, I can't, I'll ruin it for you. So I'm really very, very bad at it. It's not for sort of, you know, egotistical actor bullshit reasons. It's actually because I'm crap at it. And so I went in there and I said, I won't read. And then we ended up, Harvey was there, and we ended up going to the deli, and Harvey was really trying to get me to read, you know. And I wouldn't. And then Harvey split, and then me and Quentin had a few beers, and then we went on to this pub that I used to go to called Coach and Horses on Sunset. And we drank some more. It was getting late, and we were smashed to bits. And I said, I'll read anything for you. So he started writing the script out on beer mats and napkins and stuff. And that didn't work, so we went and got some more beers across the road, 7-Eleven. And we went back to my apartment, and I had the script, and we read everything about 5 times, but we were so gone. So that's the only time I've read for years. Yeah. Yeah, but you know, I've worked with sort of, you know, young directors and first timers plenty of times. That never worried me. It still doesn't worry me. I sometimes think they're a damn sight better than directors who've made plenty of films. You know. He was this, you know, complete bundle of energy, and he'd seen films that I didn't expect him to have seen, like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and stuff like that, and The Hit. I think I thought he was fascinating, and I thought it would be a great ride. You know. I was really, really enthusiastic about it. When you're directing, you have to be 10 different directors. If you have 10 different actors, you have to be 10 different directors too. I think that's generally the case. And they were all very, very, very different. But he has an air about him of kind of eccentricity, but it was very much hit the ground running. I mean, you know, you get in the morning and look over what you're going to do for the day. Have a bit of breakfast, put your costume on, and then it's high energy from then on in. Very much like any interview you'll see with Quentin, that's kind of how he is on set. Which was, you know, by the end of it you're exhausted, but you're thrilled. You know, it was, you know. He does a very bad English accent, Quentin, and he considers himself to be you know, an authority on English accents, and it's almost as good as Dick Van Dyke's, but not quite. There's a lot of blood in that film. I think there's only 9 pints in the body. I think we had about 4 gallons on the floor, or 5 gallons. Yeah, he used to have to hose you down because you're laying on the floor, and then it starts to set. So they have to sort of scoop me off the floor and then take me outside and hose me down so I could get my costume on and stuff. At the end of every day, Mike joined me. Luckily, at least I had one kind of person that joined me, because when I shoot him in the film, he ended up lying in a pool of blood, which was great. So they used to scrape him off the floor as well. So at least someone else had to go through it. I remember not thinking I wouldn't like Mike before I met him. So, you know, oh God, he's Mr. Cool, you know, and falling in love with him. You know, actually, I think it was one of the kind of enduring memories with him. I really liked him a lot.
He spent a lot of time in jail.
I think he was arrested for impersonating an actor, wasn't he? One time. The most challenging was the dialect and trying to get that right, because it's kind of embarrassing when you're doing dialects. If you're at the beginning, when you're new, it's a bit embarrassing really. And doing an accent, you know, amongst people who have that accent and they're checking you out. And the system that I like to use is start 3 weeks beforehand, breaking down the script just into sounds and stuff. And it was Suzanne Celeste, who is actually in the film. And she was my dialect coach. We worked 3 weeks beforehand, and then she's on set every day with the headphones and listening and making notes about what sounds are wrong for the sound people, for editing and so on. And then through filming on set every day that I'm on set, and then in looping afterwards, in revoicing afterwards. So we just shoot, you know, like, do the whole thing. But she was driving me up the wall. She drove me crazy. It's brilliant. I used her many times. She drove me crazy. So I got her the job of the woman who shoots me, and I shoot her, which was great. But no, that's how I deal with it. I work very hard at it, and you have to have a fairly good ear. That was the most challenging. The rest was fun, I have to say. I mean, there were days when it was painful and monotonous, which is what filmmaking mostly is, as far as acting side is concerned. But we did laugh a lot. We thought, I mean, we quietly, I remember looking at Harvey one day and he said, "What do you think?" I said, "I think it's pretty good." He said, "Shh," you know. don't say it too loud.
Don't look Quentin.
Yeah, no, don't let anyone know, you know, because you don't want to jinx it. But yeah, we did feel it was, we were part of something good. It was a good film. It would be a great tale. Yeah.
I never really was trying to sell Reservoir Dogs because at some point I had finally been able to sell True Romance for like the lowest amount of money they could legally pay me. But I could have actually made Reservoir Dogs in 16mm with $30,000, so I kind of could make my movie. So I didn't have to fuck it up. I didn't have to compromise in any way. I mean, if you want to give me $1 million to make my movie, well then all great, but it's got to be the same movie because I can make this for $30,000 on 16, and you won't be in a warehouse. It'll be in a garage, but that'll all be good. All right. It won't star Harvey Keitel, all right, but it'll all be good. I'll be a filmmaker. I'm not a filmmaker now. Harvey Keitel is the one that kind of like gave me and Lawrence legitimacy, and how it happened. It was, it's like, if Harvey had have said yes to the movie and wanted to do it, I think we would have eventually got it made, but it would have been like the normal route of like taking a long time. Harvey has always been one of my favorite actors in the world, and like literally in a wish list. All right, of like whoever I could have be Mr. White, Harvey Keitel was always like #1 on the list. So we were trying to get it to him, even though we had no legitimacy, no money, no nothing. Okay, just a script. Lawrence Bender was going to an acting class, and just anyone out there, this is kind of how it can work. All right, and it's like for as many things that can go bad, things can go good. Just like that line in True Romance. Things bad things happen. Well, that's the way it goes. But don't forget, it can go the other way too. Pendulum swings both ways. It might not seem like it sometimes, but eventually it will. And this is a guy talking pretty much through most of my 20s. Had nothing but bad luck at all. My joke used to be from 19 to 28. All right, was 27 or something like that. Was if you wanted to send a letter to me, you could write it. Quentin Tarantino on the outskirts of the film industry. If you'd have sent it there, I'd have got it, because that's right where I was. All right, that's where I lived. Lawrence Bender was going to this one acting class, and his teacher was married to an actress named Lily Parker, who was a member of the Actors Studio in New York, who knew Harvey. Lawrence got it to his acting teacher in Los Angeles. His teacher read it and liked it. Then sent it to New York to his wife, Lily Parker, who I don't know, Lawrence doesn't know. He knew her husband. Lily Parker read it and liked it and gave it to Harvey Keitel. So we're really liking Lily. 3 days later, Harvey Keitel called up Lawrence Bender. And we got on the phone with him, and he goes, "Yes, well, Quentin, I would love to do this movie. I think it's fantastic, and the script is it's quite amazing, and the dialogue, and just wonderful writer. So, but I want to be involved in it. I would like to be one of the producers on it and help you get in. You're the boss, but I think we can maybe help you get it made. At that time, Harvey Keitel saying he's going to be the star of your movie. It's not like all of a sudden doors flew open or anything like that, but he gave us legitimacy. We had no legitimacy. We were just a couple of guys out there trying to get a movie made like millions of other guys in Hollywood. The reality is, Richard Gladstein at Live, who is really the guy that put me in the position to make a movie. Now, Richard had the meeting with Lawrence and with Monte, not yet with me. So I was like the last guy for him to meet. So he was so gung-ho, and I'd heard he was so gung-ho, so it was kind of all mine to screw up almost. All right? And I had done a movie called My Best Friend's Birthday that it was never finished, and I just had like little clips of it, and I had had bad experience showing it and everything, you know? So literally it was like, and she goes, so you've done a movie before? Well, I never finished it. And he goes, can I see some footage from it? No. And he's the reason, you know, that waiting for that one yes that will make you a director when you have absolutely nothing to show for. All right? He was the one that said yes. All right? He wouldn't have even read the script if Harvey hadn't been attached. He'd just always been a fan of Harvey's, and go, oh, it could be really cool to make a movie with Harvey Keitel. Yes, I think I'll take that home tonight, as opposed to letting his reader read it, which he probably would have passed on it. All right? And he read it and loved it. And then that was the beginning of my life, basically, part 2. There's no super method of like, oh, this is my style and this is what I'm trying to do or anything like that, but it's just a mixture of, I guess, I'm always like a slight hesitant to try to explain certain things I do, because in doing that, not because I'm afraid of revealing stuff, but in trying to articulate it, I'm almost putting more of an onus on it than I really am at the time. You know what I mean? And I don't want to make it sound like it's really super thought out. But it is a kind of a combination of the fact that it's like, I mean, look, dialogue is the easiest thing in the world for me. I think my dialogue's pretty good, and because it comes so easy that it's almost, I almost feel like it's not really mine almost, all right? It's like, if there is such a thing as a God's gift or anything, that's one of the gifts he gave me. And part of the thing in doing it is just getting characters to talk to each other. It's just like, I just get them talking to each other, and they're off. The characters are writing it. I'm like a stenographer. I'm like a court reporter. All right, I'm just, no, actually I don't type it, I write. All right, but I'm just writing it down. Taking genre characters and genre situations, all right, and giving them a real life spin. Have them sound like real people, like, you know, me and my friends and just other people, and make references that other people make, that movie characters don't necessarily make, all right? And talk about shit other than the plot, all right? You know, most of us don't talk about the plot in our lives, all right? We talk all around things, and we talk about bullshit, and we talk about things that interest us. Gangsters don't just talk about gangster plot related stuff and just polish their bullets, all right? And talk about this murder or that murder. They talk about songs on the radio. They talk about, you know, the chicken dinner they had last night, or they're having this moment and this girl, and then, well, sometimes in gangster movies they'll have them talk about a girl, but that's about it. They don't talk about just stuff. And people are people. In the course of that, 1, it's funny. 2, it can be entertaining. 3, it's like kind of likable in a strange way, all right? It makes them seem human, all right? And it's also authentic. Rappers and cops and gangsters and real gangsters, you know, real criminals or gangbangers and everything said, no, man, Reservoir Dogs is it. That is it. There's no like melodrama attached to the scenes when they talk. They talk like real people. They talk about the shit that we talk about. All right. And then like the most outrageous stuff is the stuff that rings the most true. That's something I've learned from life. And I also kind of learned from, you know, Omar Leonard in his books. Would always throw all these constant little monkey wrenches that just smacked true of life. Cops were chasing after characters running down the street. Okay, they commandeer a car, throw the person out, jump in the car. But it's a stick shift and they don't drive a stick. All right, that's real life. And it kind of fucks up the genre moment. All right, kind of fucks up the speediness of the film. All right, well, that's what I'm always trying to do. It's like, you know, the movie's really funny. I'm hearing laughs when I'm making my movie. That doesn't mean that it's like a comedy and everything is nothing serious and everything is just one big fucking joke. All right. You know, I think Pulp Fiction should be in the comedy section of a video store. All right. Reservoir Dogs should be in the comedy section. But I pride myself that if you tape an audience watching Reservoir Dogs, just tape the audience, that you would swear you were listening to an audience watching a comedy. My shit can cut your head off, but it's funnier at the same time than any other comedy playing in the theaters right now. But you know, and I'm totally not the only guy to do that. Taxi Driver, one of the most intense movies ever made, is absolutely fucking hysterical. I mean, just hysterical. If you were to tape an audience watching it, you would swear you're watching an audience watching a comedy. Carrie is hysterical. Jaws, for that matter. All right, again, people howl all through Jaws until you stop howling. I love fucking with an audience. I mean, I love taking them on a ride. They're not just watching a movie where images are glazing over them. I'm fucking with them. I'm giving them experience. They may appreciate the experience. They may not appreciate the experience. They're getting their $8 worth, or their $9 worth, or $11 worth, whatever the fuck it cost. All right, you know, they went to the motherfucking movies that night. All right, they had an experience. Now, she might not like it, and he might like it, and he might not like it, and she might like it. Oddly enough, it was kind of cool. Some of the strongest defenders of Reservoir Dogs were women. The women who got it. The women who got it would defend it against all comers. Women could get like ugly. All right, you know, like no, you don't understand. They were always like my strongest defender. I mean, the women that got it would take on all comers. It's like no, you're wrong. You're completely wrong. I remember, you know, I couldn't have been happier with my cast, and then we all had a dinner at Harvey Keitel's house after everyone got cast, a little cast dinner. And it was the entire cast, nobody really knew each other before this time. It was the whole cast and Lawrence, and me and Lawrence. And so we're all like having dinner and getting to know each other and talking and everything. And I'm just sitting at this table, looking at everybody. And like Harvey, when he was in town, he'd always rented a house in Malibu, all right, on the beach. And I'm just looking around at all these terrific actors and all these great guys, you know, and I really didn't want it to be some, you know, Scorsese want to be Goodfellas, you know, Italian goomba shit, all right? And because these guys are not Goodfellas style gangsters. These guys are professional robbers. That's what they do. They're much closer in spirit to the Richard Stark character of Parker. All right, guys, that's what they do for a living, you know, and they're not all Italian, all come from fucking New York. All right, you know, this guy's from Kansas, and this guy's from this. I wanted them all have different, you know, energies and stuff, and different, you know, personalities. And they all had to work together as an ensemble. If Mr. Buscemi never met Mrs. Buscemi, and little Steve was never born, then maybe 3 other actors might not be in the movie either. You know what I mean? You know, you can say, oh, we'll cast John Malkovich to play this role, and Dennis Hopper to play this role, and Judd Nelson to play this role, and Kevin Bacon to play this role, and won't it be great? All right, well, you know, maybe it will be great, but maybe it won't be. Not because all those guys aren't good, but because maybe it's not just like the right fit. They're not right fit of energies and personalities. All right, and by the way, everybody in Reservoir Dogs had a completely different acting style. All right, completely different method of working. Sitting at that table, I just realized, shit. If I keep this movie in focus, I've got a terrific movie. If I don't have a single solitary idea of how to shoot a given scene, which is shit you think about when you've never made a movie before. If I just shoot it like boring old television, it'll be dynamic. Because these guys are so great. I could put these fuckers in a white shirt up against a white wall, and I got a movie. I remember that night, you know, Harvey lived, like I said, way the fuck out in Malibu and PCH, and I lived like in Glendale, all right? And I remember taking Sunset the long way around, Sunset from Malibu to Glendale. And I was a little drunk, all right, because we were drinking, not like smashed, but just drinking wine, you know, so I'm like, all right, you know, in a little wonderful wine world, all right, not ridiculously dangerous, but like, you know, just a little buzzed. And I wanted that long drive because I was maybe the happiest I'd ever been in my life. I had just had dinner with my actors for my movie, and I just knew it was just going to be great. And I just took this long, long drive and just thought about how great life was. just at that moment, it just couldn't have been better. I was living my dream, and my dream was going to be great.
Okay, we got men set up across the street from Karina's Fine Jewelry. But their orders are going to be not to move in unless the robbery gets out of control. You got to make sure they don't have to move in. You're on the inside to make sure everything goes according to oil. You got that? We got men set up a block away from the warehouse rendezvous. They have complete visibility of the exterior, so when Cabot shows up, we'll see it.
What's your visibility of the interior?
Shit, we can't see shit on the inside, man. We can't take the risk of getting any closer for fear they'll spot us.
This is bullshit, Jim. I get all the fucking danger of having you guys in my back pocket and none of the fucking safety.
What's the matter, New and Dyke? Job too tough for you, man? Nobody lied to you, man. You knew we were gonna hang back until Cabot showed up.
Oh, this is fucking great. I get no fucking protection from you whatsoever, but I do get attitude.
Since when does a fucking undercover cop have fucking protection, Freddy? You came into this thing with your eyes wide open, now you're screaming blind man on me. Little menopausal bitch. Look, I understand that you're nervous, all right? And I wish the warehouse had more visible windows, but it doesn't. We have to make do with the cards we were dealt. You're fired. You're fucking off the case.
I didn't say I wasn't gonna do it. I was just remarking on how shitty the situation is.
Look, man, I don't mean to be harsh with you, all right? But I find that tough love works best in these situations. Now, we have got to get Cabot in the vicinity of the loot and the company of the thieves, man. We don't give a fuck about those other bastards. We're willing to offer them good deals to testify against Cabot.
Isn't this risk a little unorthodox?
What risk, man?
Let them go ahead with the robbery?
Whole fucking idea behind this operation, man, is to catch Cabot red-handed, all right? We bust these hired hands, man. We ain't accomplished shit. Yeah, it's a risk letting them go through with the heist, man, but Cabot's jobs are clean. We have men surrounding the perimeter, man. Now, we could replace the employees with cops, man, but we run the risk of tipping them off.
Well, no, that's out, you know, because they know the faces of who works what shift.
It's because they're professionals, man. We're professionals. It's a risk, but it's a calculated risk, okay?
.22 Denver, take one. A and B common marker. Action! Front legs.
Can't stand the sight of blood myself. Save on your job.
.22 Denver, take one. A and B common marker. Action! Front legs.
Can't stand the sight of blood myself.
Think about how money you're gonna save on eardrops. Hey, what's going on? You hear that? Don't go anywhere, I'll be right
What you want?
Jim,
Who the fuck is this?
it's Freddie. Freddie Newendike.
You find him yet, Newendike?
I'm looking right at him.
So what's Mr. White's real name?
Dimmick. Lawrence Dimmick. D-I-M-I-C-K.
Good work, Newendike. We'll see what we can find out about Mr. Dimmick's ass.
All right.
Your life, Lawrence Dimmick.
All right, McCluskey, read us what you got.
All right, Lawrence Larry Dimmick, also known as Lawrence Jacobs and Alvin L. Jacobs. This guy is Mr. Joe Armed Robbery. He's a pro, and he makes it a habit not to get caught. He's only been convicted twice, which is pretty good for a guy living a life of crime. Once for armed robbery when he was 21 in Milwaukee.
What was it?
A routine, it was a payroll office at a lumberyard. First offense, he got 18 months. He didn't get busted again until he was 32. It was a routine vice squad rouse. You know, they rouse this bar, Buddy Lawrence is in there knocking down a few. He gets picked up. They give him 2 years for that.
Ah, damn, it's a hard time.
So far, it's the only time he's ever done.
So this Vice Squad bullshit go down in Milwaukee?
No. The Vice Squad rouse was in L.A. He's lived in Los Angeles since '77.
When you do this time?
Back in '83 to '85. I found something else that I think you two should be aware of. About a year and a half ago in Sacramento, a guy named John Dolans.
Any relation to Mickey Dolenz? This is the Monkees. It was a group, kind of like the Beatles back. Shut up. Sorry, go ahead. Go on.
Well, anyway, this guy named John Dolans, who's in Sacramento, he's an undercover cop. He works his way into a bank job. Apparently, before the job, they found out that he was a cop. Now picture this. It's Dolans' birthday. A bunch of cops are at his apartment hanging out for a surprise party. Okay? The door opens, they yell, "Surprise!" And standing there is Dolans with this guy sticking a gun in his ribs. Before anybody knows what's going on, the guy shoots Dolans dead and starts firing .245 automatics into the crowd.
Then what happened?
It was a mess. Cops got hit, wives got hit, girlfriends got hit, his dog got hit. People got glass in their faces. 3 were dead, 6 were wounded.
They pinned the killing on one of the bank robbers?
We tried, but they didn't have a positive ID, and, you know, all those guys had alibis. Besides, we really didn't have anything on them, except the testimony of a dead man that they were gonna commit a robbery, but, you know, they never committed the robbery.
Larry Dimmick was one of the boys?
It's probably the one.
Just how sure are you of your cover?
Well, today they may know something. Tomorrow they may know something else, but yesterday they didn't know jack shit. So, what's the next step?
Next step is you do what they tell you to do, man. You stay in your apartment till they call you. I'll have a couple of men posted outside, follow you when they pick you up.
All things considered, this was pretty successful.
I don't believe you just said that.
I don't know, it's messy as hell. But do you realize how much we got away with here? There's over $2 million worth of stones there.
I love this guy.
Hey, what's done's done. We can all sit around and have a big cry over it, or we can take care of the situation in there.
The situation at hand isn't that fucking satchel. You and Joe have responsibility to your men.
I did the best I could.
The man is fucking dying.
And I told you Bonnie will take care of him.
He needs a doctor, not a fucking nurse.
Ask me how many doctors I called. Go ahead and embarrass yourself. Ask me how many doctors I called.
Obviously, not enough.
Hey, fuck you, buddy boy. You got a little black book, then whip it out. Otherwise, shut the fuck up, because I called 3 doctors and I couldn't get through to shit. The time being a factor, I called Bonnie. All right, I told her a bullshit story. Upside, she said bring him to her apartment.
If he dies, I'm holding you personally responsible.
Hey, fuck you, buddy boy.
Fuck you.
All right, fuck you too.
Fuck you talking to.
All right? Hey, fuck off. You want to play that way? I'm leaving myself very fucking vulnerable with this Bonnie situation. But me being such a fucking nice guy, I'm willing to do it, but no more. Forget about it. I'm calling her back, and I'm telling her to forget about it. Because you know so much fucking about it.
Come on, huh?
You might as well take care of it yourself,
Jesus
right,
Christ, will
asshole?
you guys grow up?
Hey, I am grown up, you fucking... All right, I'm sorry. I am grown up, okay? I'm trying to take care of business here.
Cut the shit.
I'm trying to be responsible.
I don't believe you called anybody except some coos you once fucked who happens to wear orthopedic shoes. I don't think that's good enough care for a gut-shot man.
Yeah, you know what? I don't give a flying fuck what you think.
Look, nobody's saying this bitch is gonna operate on him. But she's gonna give him better attention than we can. She's a nurse, you know? Nobody's forgetting about doctors. I mean, Joe will get one in a snap.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, I think you're both acting like a couple of assholes.
Pink, you arrange a nurse, I'll leave myself wide open and I'm an asshole?
We all consider ourselves the class of '92, you know, because that was like right kind of, that was when that kind of whole independent thing exploded, was kind of that year. It'd been building and building and the explosion happened that year.
I think the year in which it became clear that the independent cinema can and does offer alternative to mainstream Hollywood cinema is 1992. Not only in terms of Sundance, but in terms of quantity. There was funding, there was more finance, there was excitement. There were new companies around that specialized in distributing independent films, and there were new audiences that were craving to see something more intelligent, more provocative than typical actioner or popcorn movie that came from the studio system.
When I look back at Sundance Film Festival in 1992 and think of the films that are there, there's Alexander Rockwell's In the Soup, which won the big prize. There was Allison Anders' Gas, Food, and Lodging.
The Living End from Greg Araki.
There was Derek Jarman's Edward II.
Reservoir Dogs.
Shae Rubin's Poison Ivy.
Swoon by Tom Kalin.
There was Neil Jimenez and Michael Steinberg's The Water Dance.
The Hour and Times by Christopher Munch.
There was Anthony Drazen's Zebrahead. And there were also, significantly to me, a retrospective Stanley Kubrick, which is great in regard to Quentin.
And the other thing that you have to know about Sundance is everyone's totally stoned on the fact that the air is so thin and you're up so high. And, it's an experience like you lose your mind. You go from movie to movie and you kind of don't register the fact that you aren't in your mind because the air is very thin. And so you're having all these incredibly peak experiences. And of course the films that work at Sundance are the films, for that reason, that get your adrenaline up. It's like the alternative to going out and skiing. You go see one of these movies, and that's how you cope with the climate.
Sundance at that stage to me seemed like, I mean, this is funny to think of now, but Sundance seemed slightly corporate or something. It was an organized feature-length film festival. It was the establishment, and Sundance in 1992 was, worlds away from what Sundance is now in terms of just its organization and the scale.
So the interesting exercise for me is to look at those movies that I saw back in my my 1992 Sundance experience and think, was Reservoir Dogs the only big news that came out of there?
Well, it's funny about the competition, because when I went there, I certainly didn't, the thought of winning never even occurred to me. But the buzz was really heavy, and it was all about that it was between Reservoir Dogs or Poison Ivy who was going to win.
Every filmmaker that I talked to or something was always coming up, because I was like the high-profile movie there, was coming up to me and just saying, hey, so I hear it's you and me up for the big award, all right? I had like 8 different filmmakers, so I hear it's between us.
I had no idea, that it would ever win a prize. I mean, I thought Reservoir Dogs was going to win a prize. I thought that was, everyone was talking, the buzz was... See, we came in kind of blind. No one knew our film.
The way that Sundance works is that there are various categories. There are 2 competition categories, fiction and doc, and Reservoir Dogs was actually shown in competition.
I wasn't really in competition for fucking anything as far as the jury was concerned. Okay.
I remember the night of the awards, someone asking me to sit in the front row, and I was so stupid at the time, I had no idea what that meant. I was like, sit in the front row next to Faye Dunaway. It's like, I remember seeing her in movies, like, why don't I sit next to Faye Dunaway?
And basically, after basically getting my dick blown for 2 weeks straight about, you're the movie, you're the shit, all right? I don't win jack fucking shit.
Of course, we were both shut out, I think. I think Quentin was shut out also. I know that I was completely.
Well, Quentin, you didn't need our award. You're set. Your career was set. Your talent was there. Hollywood's knocking at your door. You don't need us. And I'm like, what the fuck does that have to do with anything? We wanted to give Water Dance the screenplay because of that whole impotency thing. We wanted to give Swoon best cinematography because we wanted to support black and white. The one special award that we were up for the consideration for was for my editor, Sally. All right, best editor. All right, that was the one, because she was female. That was the one that they would have given Reservoir Dogs. Okay, we're gonna support the chick doing the dude movie. All right, but ultimately they decided that Seymour Cassell was far worthier. All right.
And then Seymour got a Best Actor prize, a special jury prize, and I thought that's what it was. Great, it was, in the soup.
The one they really all agreed on was Hour in the Times. They wanted to give that grand prize, but it was only an hour long, so they could only give it a special prize. But they could all agree on In the Soup. So that's how that went.
If you follow that logic, just turns the prizes and the juries into this kind of charity event. We'll give it to some dull but worthy, needy film.
And I wasn't the only guy that went on to have a big, went on to really make a name for himself in independence. And Gregor Rocky win shit that year, all right? And then we all proceeded to go to festivals all around the world and win shit and create a name for ourselves. For the next 3 years, we were the closest equivalent America had to the French New Wave. I always said, well, we're not as good, but not all of us anyway.
I went back last year to Sundance, and I was up there. I hadn't been there since In the Soup, and it just has become such a show-busy kind of, con in the mountains, and it's all about agents and bullshit and people bidding wars and power trips and, Mariah Carey, on Main Street wearing some skimpy outfit in sub-zero weather, It was like, what the fuck, this is Sundance?
When I think of the Sundance Film Festival and I think of the year '92, which is when I was first there, I think that a lot of the programming changed after that as a reflection of simply the types of films that were being made and who was making them. And in a way, the stakes changed also because everybody was obviously looking to have commercially successful, very commercially successful films and to use Sundance as a launching place for them.
Every good thing has an arc, and I think it's time for something new like Slam Dance or Slam Dunk or one of these other film festivals to kind of start the new thing, because it's becoming, when you have Mariah Carey's movie in competition at Sundance, there's something, and when you have Jeff Gilmore standing, not to say anything bad about Jeff, but to have Jeff Gilmore stand up and say how honored he is to have Mariah Carey there, you know, something's rotten in Denmark. Something doesn't smell so good anymore.
I guess what is, wait for this track. Sorry, I'll just wait for someone to pass. I think somebody's coming down. Oh, hi, George. This is Mark. George, he just had to shoot a short interview with me. The Hours and Times I shot in 1988 in Spain and England, and when I made it, I really didn't have a sense that it would be shown publicly at all or seen at film festivals. So when it was accepted to the Sundance Festival in 1992, it was kind of heartening that people did have a chance to see it, and it was especially heartening, I think, that the festival that particular year was a good one in the sense that many really interesting filmmakers sort of presented their first work or some of their best work in any case. People like Allison Anders and Alex Rockwell and Quentin Tarantino and Greg Araki, Tom Kalin were all there that year. So it was kind of a privilege to have been part of such a good group. I guess one of the things that's more eccentric or even uncommercial about the Hours and Times is its length and the fact that it runs only 60 minutes. This was not something that I ever really thought about while I was making the film because it seemed like the appropriate length for the story, and I never really thought very much about the commercial repercussions of that because I didn't think that the film would be seen commercially at all. In addition to the fact that it was photographed in black and white, these were sort of formidable obstacles in releasing it theatrically because we generally don't see theatrical films that are scaled at 60 minutes. And yet so many of the films that we see would benefit by being treated at that length rather than forcing themselves to be a full-length feature. So I was very pleased that Alberto Garcia, who was running the competition at Sundance that year, programmed it despite the fact that their rules, I think, normally called for a film to be 70 minutes in length in order to be in competition. The advice that I would give to a filmmaker starting out today would be obviously to have something to say that's worth saying, but apart from that, to do it in a way that's comfortable to that person, not necessarily to use the production models that are held up as standard, but to find your own production model and to do it in a way that allows you to really bring out the most that's inherent in what it is you've written, to shoot it for however long or however little time is necessary, to do it in whatever gauge or whatever medium is most suited to it, and not simply to make these decisions simply because it's fashionable now to shoot films in digital video.
Any regrets?
No. I have no regrets about the films that I've made or the way in which I've made them. Like everybody, I'm still hoping to make some inroads in the commercial cinema, but only with the stuff that is important to me and to which I can bring some sort of voice.
Bob Shae had read some reviews about my Roger Corman movies, and he had called us into New Line to meet because he wanted to do something. And Sarah Risher there put us together with Peter Morgan and Melissa Gilbert, who had this idea that was kind of loosely based on Melissa's life, where this girlfriend came into her life and really just wreaked havoc on her family. And I love that idea. Well, to me, it wasn't really a genre picture. It wasn't even a thriller. It was really a movie about the friendship between two girls and the betrayal. What Sundance did for Poison Ivy was, I think it really legitimized it, because the distributors at New Line really did not get this movie, and they would have liked to have seen it just disappear. They did not understand the relationship between the girls. They didn't understand that this movie really had some depth and really had something to say. And, you know, they made 60 prints of it and thought it would just completely go away. So I think that being at Sundance really showed them there was something special here, even though they still didn't get it. They still didn't make any more prints. But it made a difference, you know? I really think it did. And then the audience reaction was really good. I mean, it was huge. They only made 60 prints and theaters were packed. People perceived a division between what they would classify as an independent film and a film that was more studio friendly or would get the attention of the studios more. And I think that Poison Ivy fell into that class, and probably Reservoir Dogs did too. Some of the movies with the most depth, people have called exploitation movies. And, you know, I really don't like that. To make a dividing line between what is, you know, worthy and what is art and what is exploitation is very presumptuous. And that's something you get right under my craw with that one, because I think that certainly the movies I've made and movies Quentin has made, you know, have had tremendous depth to them. You can watch them over and over again and find new things in them that you didn't see before. This coming from the director who shot Carrie 2, where a guy, you know, gets shot in the crotch with a spear gun and his penis goes into the pool. So I walk out, I mean, I can't stand the guy's ear getting cut off, but in Streets, I have a guy who, like, gets a gun shoved up his butt and gets killed this way, you know? So it's so funny. It's like the stuff I can shoot is so much worse than the stuff I can watch. But that shows how, you know what? I think it shows how effective Quentin's directing was. Because, man, I could not take, I'm trying to move around here. I couldn't take it. It was so intense. A lot of times the movies that I think are really important aren't easy. They don't go down easy. You know, I think that they're movies that really are often very provocative and they're very hard to take. But they have something to say, and, you know, they hit you in a place, in a very, you know, visceral kind of place.
I'm from the art world. I never expected to be a feature film director. I never expected really to have the career I ended up having. And I think that is very much reflected in Swoon. I mean, I was watching avant-garde experimental films. I was watching Warhol films. I was watching all that kind of stuff. Swoon tells a story of Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb, two 18-year-old intellectual Jewish boys from the south side of Chicago who decided to create what they thought was the perfect crime. They murdered a 13-year-old boy that they knew, you know, not well. He was an acquaintance, for no apparent reason, and it became known as the crime of the century in 1924. It was one of, you know, my mother actually grew up in Chicago. My mother is in her 80s, and for her, I think the Leopold and Loeb case was like the Manson case was maybe for me growing up. It was this unbelievable, incomprehensible crime that was just horrific because it was random, because any child could be plucked off the street and killed. And it became an interesting case, I think, in terms of discussion of criminality and Jewishness and all that stuff in the court case. one of the interesting things about Swoon, it was before the proliferation of the Avid, and so we couldn't afford what was then a very expensive technology, and we cut on 3/4-inch video. That was how the film was completed, but it was working on linear video editing. Yeah, and Ellen Kuras, who shot Swoon, her background, she had mainly done photography. Both of us had done a ton of black and white photography. We didn't have money to see the dailies on the movie, so we shot black and white Polaroids for the whole film as dailies, and because of our shared photographic experience, it was really actually an incredible benefit. Because we could say, okay, that's F5/6, let's close down a stop, or let's give some more fill light or whatever, and judge what the image really looked like in large part by those Polaroids, which is amazing when I think back on that. During that period of time, we all said something like the budget was the aesthetic. You had embraced the low-budget aspect of it, and that led to the look of the film. So, Swoon, I couldn't rent many period cars. I had one 1924 car. I made that car stand in for all the cars I couldn't use. Or if you looked at somebody like Chris Munch, who had a film that year, The Hours and the Times, that film is incredibly, it's like a testament to working in an economical mode. He basically went to Spain, rented a hotel room, and pretty much made the movie with very few people around him. And it's an incredibly beautiful, lyrical film that, cuts to the quick of its subject matter. Really manages to conjure somebody like, John Lennon in a way that's remarkable for the scale of the film. I did think it was funny, actually. I think Greg Araki was included in this article. Sight and Sound in the early 90s, Amy Taubin wrote an article called The Sons of Scorsese, and I'm in that article, and Quentin's in that article, and Greg Araki's in that article. And again, I think it's kind of funny now, because, yeah, okay, so we bludgeoned a 13-year-old kid to death in Swoon, but it has very little to do with Reservoir Dogs or The Living End. Sure, I'm interested in violence in film. Many of my films have violence as an element of the story or the plot in them. It's a little kind of crazy that people think that there's such a kind of direct correlation between those films. I can look at Greg's work or Quentin's work or my own work or Todd Haynes' work or any of the people we've mentioned and see very distinct voices. I'm pretty stubborn about the kind of movies I want to make. I'm interested in certain things, and I want to make those movies. Don't get me wrong, I want to direct as many feature films of the subject matter that I want to direct as I can do in a lifetime. I've had a certain amount of misfortune in terms of, I think most people, developing films that don't happen. And the great thing for me is that having been able to produce and direct and also then direct short work and have that short work show in a sort of maybe more art world context and have support there has allowed me to switch hats in a way that I don't think a lot of people have been able to do. I've been able to keep balls in the air, and that's been really great. The film I'm developing now, Savage Grace, is a fairly expensive art movie. For me, it might be one of the bigger films I would ever direct in terms of the scale of it and the amount of money that it's going to take to do. So I think I'm lucky and fortunate to be around, to be sort of in that context of people who are working.
We were the most notorious film of the festival. All right, it's once we had a crazy first screening that was one of the best or worst screenings you could possibly have. It's like the first time I've ever shown one of my movies to a complete random audience. So we show up at Sundance, and we shot the film in scope. All right, and we get there. And then Alberto Garcia comes up and says, you know what, we thought we had a scope lens for the projector, and we don't. All right, now, I now know enough, and I wouldn't well, then we're not screening the movie. All right, that would be the first things out of my mouth. But then I didn't know enough to say that, or even didn't know I could say that, all right? So we watched the movie, we watched my scope movie, with a non-scope lens in the projector. And that's where so the first paying audience is seeing it that way. This side is out of focus, this side is spilling off the screen, and it's just a nightmare. All right, but the place is jam-packed. During the last section in the warehouse, all right, it's going on that the recriminations, they shoot Kirk Baltz and everything, and all of a sudden the lights start coming up. What the hell is going on with this? And somebody oh shit! All right, and they're bringing the lights down during this big sequence. Then the guns get pulled. All right, so everybody's got their guns on everybody else. And right at that moment, a power failure happens. All right, and just poof, you know, the projector, the screen goes black, the theater goes black. My editor, Sally Minky, was just like practically in tears, all right? And at some level, I was like, don't worry about it, Sally. It was just going so bad that I just had to gotta get into the masochistic thrill of the whole thing. It was funny because it was one of those weird things where that was either like the worst time in the world to have that happen in the movie or the best, all right? Because the audience just went, ah! They get the power back up, they turn the generators on and everything, and then they start the film again. We have our next screening of the movie. All right, and we had 4 screenings altogether. Okay, the next screening during that week happens, and no incidents. Then they have this like special Salt Lake City screening of the movie, and so I go to, because they have like a annex festival going on in Salt Lake City. So I go, hey, maybe that's the one to invite my mom to. Not all this bullshit going on over here. So my mom and some friends come over. There they have a scope lens, but it's a shitty scope lens. I mean, just a really crappy scope lens, all right? So if it's in close-up, you're fine, okay? Anything that's like a wide shot, which, you know, there's a couple of those in Reservoir Dogs, all right? Soft. At some point in the film, about midpoint in the film, this one thing, if you've grown up your whole life going to movies, that you've seen happen every once in a while, but you know it as soon as you see it, all right? Watching the movie was going through the projector, watching it, flicker, and then all of a sudden, a frame gets stuck. And you get that beat. 1, 2, burn! And I can't believe it. I go, you know what? I would bet that 85% of all the directors who've ever lived have never had to watch their movie burn on screen. 3rd time my movie shows, I get that cigarette burn effect. I go, fuck me. It's the big screening at Sundance, at the Egyptian, all right, which is like their big theater, but it's like not even really a theater. It's like a moose lodge that they've converted into a theater. That's the big industry screening. Like Faye Dunaway's in the audience, all right. In the question and answer session, Faye Dunaway asked me a question, all right. Everybody from Hollywood had invaded by that time, all right, and so they're all there, and it's like, well, I had a horrible screening, okay screening, horrible screening. So I guess this is like the falling. But I really turn it into a whole thing, just like I just did right now, but a little funnier and a little tighter. I described all the experiences that I'd had at Sundance in my introduction to the movie, all right, with the sheer intention of scaring the shit out of the projectionist. Don't let a fucking thing happen to this screening, all right? And then it went over fantastic, all right? And so all those other screens were forgotten.
So how's Alabama?
Tell you the truth, Joe, me and Bam are busting up.
Oh, Jesus Christ, Larry. I'm sorry.
Thanks a lot, Joe.
So, any chance you two will patch it up?
Not likely.
How's Laurie and Grace taking it?
They're taking it. Not happy about it, but what are they gonna do? We got them up at a private school now, so we'll deal with it big time come Easter. Enough of this bad stuff. Let's talk some nice stuff. Heard you tied the knot with some gorgeous gal.
Yeah. Tammy is gorgeous. She's fucking beautiful.
Is she's from Arkansas?
Tennessee. Knoxville, Tennessee. She used to be a regular on Hee Haw. You know, that country show with all those fucking...
I know what Hee Haw is. So why'd you get married?
What do you think? I love her. Pretty silly for an old fart like me, huh?
It's kind of silly. It's kind of cute, too.
You know what else is pretty silly? She loves me back. Now, I know you don't want to believe that. I don't give a damn, because I know she does. You know what else she's got me doing, Larry? Reading books. She'll read something, she'll come to me and she'll say, Joe, in that funny accent of hers, you know, sounds like little Abner. She'll say, Joe, I just read this book, and it's really good. Now I want you to read it because I want to talk with you about it. If I know what's good for me, I better read it. You ever read that?
No.
Tammy loves Sylvia Plath. I'm not so sure myself. She killed herself, you know.
Tammy?
No, asshole. Plath, the woman who wrote the goddamn book. Look, I know everybody thinks I'm a chump, but they're wrong and I'm right. Huh? Now, I know how she feels about me, and I know how she makes me feel when I'm with her.
Plath? Come on, Joe, I'm kidding around. Hey, what's hard to believe? You're a lovable guy. In fact, I'd go so far as to describe you as a catch.
Yeah, well, you keep needling me, Weisenheimer, and you're gonna meet Mr. Boot.
We've met. Mr. Butt wants to stay as far away as possible. Explain the telegram.
It's a five-man job. Busting in and busting out of the diamond wholesalers.
Can you move the ice? I don't know, nobody moves ice.
That's not a problem. I got guys waiting for it. What happened to Marcellus Spivey? I thought he always melted your ice for you.
Spivey, he's doing 20 years at Susanville.
What for?
Bad luck. What's the exposure like?
It's 2 minutes tops. But it's a tough 2 minutes. Daylight during business hours, dealing with a crowd.
How many employees?
Around 20. Security's pretty lax. They're almost always dealing in boxes, you know, rough, uncut stones that they get from the syndicate. On a certain day, this wholesaler's getting in a big shipment of polished stones from Israel. But they're like a way station. They're going to be picked up and sent out the next day to Hamburg.
No, they're not. What's the cut, Papa?
Juicy, Junior. Real juicy.
That second wave that showed up in the cars? Those are the ones responding to the alarm. But those first motherfuckers, man, I'm telling you, they were there already. They were waiting for us. Hey, Mr. White, man, huh? Haven't you thought about this?
Look, I had any fucking time to think about jack shit, man. First I was just trying to get the fuck out of there, and then I've just been dealing with him.
Please get me to a
Look,
doctor.
you shut the fuck up!
Fucking start thinking about it, all right? 'Cause that's all I'm thinking about.
Every time you talk, you lose fucking blood. I'm gonna fucking leave you if you don't just stop, if you don't shut
Whoever
up.
set us up, man, knows about this place. You hear what I'm saying? There could be cops right now on their way here.
Would you shut the fuck up and order him out? You're freaking this guy out.
Hey, I'm freaked out, okay?
Look, let's take it in the other room. Let's take it in the other fucking room. No, hey. I told you to be quiet. Every time you talk, you lose blood. Now I'm gonna leave so you don't fucking talk to anybody. You got that?
Okay, all right.
Now I'm gonna be in the other room.
Fuck am I
Just
doing?
chill the fuck out. Shut up!
I felt funny about this job right off, man. As soon as I felt that, I should have said no thank you and walked, you know, but I never fucking listened. It's like every time I ever got burned buying weed, same thing, man. I felt funny about the guy, you know? But I wanted to believe him because I feel like, you know, if he's not lying to me, and if it really is tie stick, whoa, baby, you know? But it's never fucking tie stick. And I said if I ever felt that way about a job, I'd fucking walk.
It's the fucking money. Hey, look, Dan, I need you cool. All right, what's done is done. I need you cool. Are you cool?
I'm cool.
Well, you don't look cool to me.
I'm
Why don't
cool.
why don't you splash some water in your face and really cool it out? You got a smoke?
Yeah.
Well, why don't you smoke one? Okay, now let's go through what happened here. We're in the place, and everything's going fine. Then the alarm gets tripped. I turn around, and there's cops all over the place. You're right, it was like, BAM! Blink my eyes, there's fucking Cop City out there. Then that was when everyone started going apeshit. And that was when Mr. Blonde whipped out his fucking gun and started executing people.
Man, that's not correct.
What the fuck's wrong with it?
The cops didn't show up after the alarm went off. They didn't show up after Mr. Blonde went off.
Wait a minute. As soon as I heard the alarm, that's when I said...
No, man, I'm telling you, it wasn't that soon. They didn't let their presence be known until after Mr. Blonde went off. I'm not saying they weren't there, I'm saying they were there, okay? But they didn't move in until Mr. Blonde became a madman. Don't you see? They were outside waiting, okay? The alarm goes off, they did nothing. All right, Mr. Blonde starts shooting, bang, now they had to move in. I mean, that's how I know we were set up. Oh, Jesus Christ, Mr. White, can't you see that?
Hey, God, fuck this Mr. White shit, all right?
Hey, wait a minute, man. Don't tell me your fucking name, all right? I don't want to know it. I sure as hell ain't gonna tell you my name.
You're right. This is bad. This is really, really bad. How the hell did you get out?
Shot my way out. I mean, everybody was shooting, so I just blasted my way out of there. Tagged a couple of cops. Did you kill anybody?
Couple cops.
No real people?
Just cops.
Man, could you believe Mr. Blunt?
Those are the most insane fucking things I've ever seen. What the fuck was Joe thinking about when he hired that guy? Huh?
I mean, I don't want to kill anybody, you know? But if I gotta get out that door and you're standing in my way, okay, one way or the other, you're gonna get out of my way.
You're gonna get it out of the way. I mean, that's how I think about it. A choice between knocking out some stupid motherfucker in my way and doing 10 years ain't no choice at all. Yeah, but I ain't no fucking madman. Why did you hire that guy? I mean, you can't work with a motherfucker like that. A motherfucker like that is unstable. What do you think happened, man? I mean, what do you think really happened? Do you think he panicked? You think he's trigger happy? What?
I think he's a sick fucking maniac. You know, I mean, we're goddamn awful lucky we didn't get tagged when he was doing his cowboy shit. I mean, I came this close to taking his ass out myself. You know? I mean, everybody panics. Okay? I mean, things get tense like that. Yeah, you panic. All right, but I mean, you panic on the inside. You know, in your head, you don't fucking go crazy, you know? I mean, you get a grip and you get a hold of the situation, you know? You don't shoot up the place and kill everybody.
You know what you're supposed to do? You're supposed to act like a fucking professional. A psychopath is not a professional. You can't deal with a psychopath. You can't work with a psychopath because you don't know what them crazy motherfuckers gonna do next. How old do you think that girl was? Huh? The black girl? What, 20? 21? Jesus Christ, man!
Hey, did you see what happened to anybody else?
Nah, once everything went to shit, me and Orange hopped in the car, Brown floored it, and I don't know what went down.
Oh, at that point he was every man for himself, you know? I mean, I ain't got the foggiest what happened to Mr. Blonde and Mr. Blue, you know? Because once I got out, I never looked back.
Well, what do you think happened?
What do I think? I mean, I think they either got caught or they got killed.
Not even a chance they punched through? I mean, you found a hole.
Yeah, and let me tell you, that was a fucking miracle. You know, and even if they didn't, where the fuck are they?
What makes you so fucking positive?
I got the diamonds.
You want to come back with that little piece of information again, buddy boy?
I got the diamonds, all right?
Where?
I got them.
Where? Where? Are they in your fucking car? Are they up your ass? Where the fuck are they?
No, they're not in my car. No, I don't have them on me. Look, if you want to call me and go get them, yes, we can do that. First, you gotta fucking listen to what I'm saying to you, all right? We were set up, okay? Somebody's in league with the cops. We got a Judas in our midst. I think we should have our fucking heads examined for staying here.
Well, the plan was that we meet here after the robbery.
No, fuck the plan. I mean, you know, where is everybody? I say the plan is null and void once we find out we got a rat in the house, you know? I mean, for all we know, Blonde and Blue could be dead. Maybe the cops got them out of the station house. Yeah, I mean, they don't know our names, but they could be singing about this place. Right as we speak, there could be cops coming here.
Jesus fucking Christ! Damn it, I swear to God, I am fucking jinxed!
What? Hey, man, what's the matter? What are you talking about?
2 jobs back. A 4-man job. 2 days before we were about to pull it. We found out one of the team was an undercover cop.
No shit. You see?
I mean, thank fucking God we found out in time. They just had to fucking forget it. Just walk away. Just walk away from the whole fucking thing.
Well, who do you think the rat is this time, huh? I mean, Brown, Blue, Eddie? I mean, it could even be Joe, you know? I mean, he set this whole show up. Maybe he set it up to set it up.
Hey, hold on, buddy boy. Me and Joe go back a long way. I can tell you straight up. Joe had nothing to do with this bullshit.
Hey, look. I've known Joe since I was a kid, okay? And me to say he definitely didn't do it is ridiculous. All right? I mean, I know I definitely didn't do it because I know what I did or didn't do. But I cannot definitely say that about anybody else because I don't definitely know. I mean, for all I know is you're the rat.
For all I know, you're the rat.
Yeah, all right, now you're using your fucking head. For all we know, he's the rat.
Well, he ain't the rat because he took a bullet for me. A rat wouldn't do that.
Hey, look, asshole, man, I'm right, okay? Somebody's a fucking rat. Where's my fucking piece?
I looked in the bathroom. when I wrote Reservoir Dogs, on the title page of the script, not the title, the second page inside of the title page, I dedicated. I said the following inspirations, and I named a bunch of people. I actually wanted to put it at the beginning of the movie, but then I thought it was like too cheap to like, oh, like me because of who I like, all right, you know, kind of thing. So I thought it would work better without it. But it was definitely in the script, all right, to kind of let you know where it was coming from. Tim Curry is one of the great eccentric character actors of all time, and actually I'd read, he came in and read for Joe Cabot, and it was kind of between him and Lawrence Tierney. Oddly enough, I didn't hire Timothy Curry because I'd heard he was so crazy. All right, he never would have been as bad as Lawrence Tierney at his craziest. Well, his craziest could be just as bad as Lawrence Tierney, but I don't think he would have been at that time. Timothy Curry also had this, but oh God, he was great. Because Timothy Curry he talked like this, and he's in these Kubrick films, and he's he's just a crazy fucking guy. I mean, one of the weirdest fucking actors ever. And it's like he had this passion going on about farting. All right, it was like almost like a religion to him. That people kill themselves by holding in their flagellants. All right, by like, you know, when you have to fart, you don't fart, so you're holding it in, and you're having these toxic gases that are actually killing yourself. You're letting methane into your system when you're supposed to let it out. That's the way your body's supposed to work. But society has now stopped us from doing that, and we're making our lives shorter by not like letting go of where we're holding on to our poison to be polite. All right, you know, so people should fart. That's one of the things that they should do. All right, you know, and so when he calls up, I read this script and I loved it. I give it 5 farts. Under the Toth doesn't really have a big influence on Reservoir Dogs per se, but I'm a big fan of Andre de Toth. He was one of the, now people kind of know who he is a lot more now. Scorsese has championed him quite a bit, and he wrote a really good autobiography and everything, but at that time, I was one of his only, you know, I mean, there were some critics who were champion, but he was one of my favorite of the 50s, you know, genre, either westerns with his Randolph Scott westerns or his crime thrillers like Crime Wave with Sterling Hayden and Charles Bronson, that I was a big fan of. All right, so he was one of my, like, you know, darlings of you know, hero directors of that period. It's funny, I'm not really a big fan of Chow Yun-fat anymore. I'm kind of like over him now, all right? But I was hugely influenced by Hong Kong cinema at the time. Like, it should have not say, it should say John Woo in there instead of Chow Yun-fat. It does, well, there you go, okay. But I was really taken with Chow Yun-fat a lot at that time. I was like, I thought he was one of the cooler actors to come out in movies in a long time. He kind of had this Chinese Alain Delon quality. And when I saw, not even The Killer, but when I saw Better Tomorrow, Part 2 in particular, all right, it's like I got a big long coat like him, all right, and I got a pair of glasses like him. I put a matchstick in my mouth and like walked around for about, like, you know, 3 months dressing exactly like Chow Yun-fat. I'm not really a big fan of Jean-Luc Godard anymore. I think Godard is like the way if you're like a young artist, or especially, I'm not talking about fine art, but more like, you know, comic book kind of art or something. You know, I think Godard is a little bit like a Frank Frazetta. You kind of like, you get into him for a while, and he's like your hero for a little bit, and you start drawing shit like him, and then you kind of outgrow him. I think that's kind of what Godard is for at least for me anyway, as a filmmaker. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, I just think I've outgrown him. Godard was so influential to me at the beginning of my aesthetic as a director, of like wanting to be a director. His kind of like lack of complete any type of film style, just wanting to make movies for love of it. Godard is the one who taught me the fun and the freedom and the joy of breaking rules. You know, setting up a close-up on the back of somebody's head as opposed to, you know, and just fucking around with the entire medium, all right, and breaking rules. But I consider Godard to be to cinema what Bob Dylan was to music. I haven't grown out of Dylan, I've grown out of Godard, all right? And I'm not kicking the old guy, all right? It's just I've grown out of him now. While I say I've outgrown Godard, I haven't outgrown Pauline Kael's reviews of Godard. And the most influential piece of film criticism I've ever read of my aesthetic that applied to me very young. I remember reading it at Philippe's, that French sandwich place. All right, I had one of Pauline Kael's books, and I'm reading her review of Band of Outsiders, also known as Band Apart, which I named my company after. She's reviewing Godard's movie, and she says, it's as if a couple of movie crazy young Frenchmen were in a coffee house, all right, and they've taken a banal American crime novel and they're making a movie out of it based not on the novel, but on the poetry that they read between the lines. And when I read that, I was like, that's my aesthetic. That's what I want to do. That is what I want to achieve. Melville, I haven't grown out of. Melville is the Godard I haven't grown out of. All right, I love Melville's take on genre. I think Melville, along with Sergio Leone, is probably the greatest reconstructionist of genre, and really delivering completely in his own way. All right, he knows the rules of gangster films, and he was in love with the gangster films of, like, the 30s and 40s, the film noirs of the 40s and the gangster films of the 30s, and like he took the same similar plots and took banal American crime novels and did them his own way, and really, not in the my way or Elmore Leonard way, but in his own way, had real life intrude upon them, all right, in really great ways. But another critic said this about Melville's work, and boy, it is so true, and it is, again, one of the things I held on to, is Melville was probably one of the major French influences on the New Wave. The French New Wave was battling what they considered the boring, fucked up bourgeois cinema of France at its time. Melville was the only older guy doing cinema that was inspirational to them. And if you look at Les Dolos, or Babli Flamme Bleue, or what's that one? Second Breath, or something like that. And then Les Samurai. You do get a sense, there's like an aesthetic working in Melville's work, that you get a sense that you don't have to know how to make a movie. If you truly love cinema with all your heart and with enough passion, you can't help but make a good movie. You don't have to go to school. You don't have to know a lens, a 40 and a 50 and a fuck all that shit. Crossing the line, none of that shit's important. If you just truly love cinema with enough passion, and you really love it, then you can't help but make a good movie. Lionel White wrote the novel that The Killing was based on, which, by the way, I never read. All right, I've never read his novel. I've read a couple other novels by Lionel White. But Reservoir Dogs was never, people took a sentence that I said once and said that I was like, I ripped off The Killing, or I was a paraphrase remake of The Killing. I was making a heist film, and I would say, this is my The Killing. And that means basically it's like I wrote Lionel White because I didn't want to like thank Kubrick. All right. I have a sibling rivalry with Kubrick too. All right. Same thing with Orson Welles. Fuck those guys. They ain't so good. All right. They ain't so hot. Yeah, they're okay, but Jesus Christ. Well, John Woo was a big, major, hero to me at the time. I was just so influenced by Hong Kong cinema. All right, to me, I thought, and to this day, I still think it's like the most invigorating cinema that's made in the world. All right, and to just, there had been no really in the '80s. Jesus Christ, was like the worst time for action filmmaking ever. There was really, Walter Hill, it was off his game. All the older guys died. Aldrich, Peckinpah, I mean, it was really, there was James Cameron, that was it, and he was fantastic. But there had not been a Sergio Leone or anybody like that come out and like shown us what we'd seen before, but in a completely new eyes, until John Woo. And one of the last names in that dedication was Lawrence Tierney, who I didn't know I was going to be able to cast him in the movie or not, but just like I wanted a couple of guys two crazy, out there, fucking eccentric actors like a Timothy Carey and a Lawrence Tierney that were still alive, that could you know, I could mention a lot of guys who were dead, but I wanted to mention a couple of guys that were a brand of cinema and a brand of actor, of eccentric, wild actor that basically you shoot them and it's like, you know, you send it to the lab, it's like worth developing, all right? You got something, all right? They're worth sending to the lab, all right? And Lawrence Tierney was just a wonderful touchstone to the kind of filmmaking I wanted to do.
I met Lawrence Tierney in the early 90s, and now we can say early 90s, through a friend named Ron Zwang, who's a screenwriter. Introduced me to Larry, said, you gotta meet this guy, Lawrence Tierney. I was just struck by his look. He's sort of one-part chiseled, good-looking actor meets Tor Johnson. There's something about Larry's face that every crevice, every wrinkle tells 100 tales. You can look in that face and you can see bar fights and dysfunctional relationships with women and, you know, every hardship that he endured, you know, from alcohol to everything. It's all in that face. I mean, they don't make faces like that anymore. When Lawrence Tierney died, I mean, a whole generation of tough guys just went away.
I loved Lawrence. I just really loved him. He was wonderful. But he was completely a directorial, you know, school by fire. Even like Harvey Keitel, you know, I've made a lot of movies and I've never dealt with a crazy motherfucker like Lawrence Tierney.
He was a very, very funny guy, and he was really kind of like a big teddy bear. You know, he was kind of like a big mentor to all of us, and as annoying as it was to work with him and to play a scene with the man, it's just so incredibly aggravating.
Like, Tim wouldn't even act with him in the same room. I don't want that fat fuck in the goddamn room when I'm acting. And
at one point, I think Harvey and Steve had to pry them, Quentin and Lawrence, apart. I mean, seriously. You're trying to ruin my film.
Fuck you. It's usually even funnier when, like, you get a Steve Buscemi or you get a Michael Madsen telling the story.
I remember that Lawrence Tierney got in a big argument with Quentin that day and got fired. I'll let the other guys tell that story. I'm not sure what they're going to say. That was a funny one.
It was the last 20 minutes of the last day of shooting of the first week. He didn't like my dialogue. He had a hard time remembering it. And it was, yeah, it's fucking shit, too fucking convoluted.
Somebody comes up with the finally, so fuck it, I fucked up. I'll keep going. Stop.
I'm just saying, it's so fucking repetitive. I'm just saying the same thing over again. You know, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? You know,
you don't say anything about you, anything but you. I'm up.
Hey, Katt,
it's
no
because
problem.
it's so fucking repetitive.
No, that was... Hey, I don't want to say that joke you give me. That fucking dirty joke. It's disgusting.
Oh, you guys like to tell jokes and giggle and kid around, huh? Giggling like a bunch of young broads sitting in a schoolyard. Well, let me tell a joke. I was no good, fuck it.
Yeah, we'll do it one more time. He also had this thing where you'd be trying to talk to him. You know, okay, so Lawrence, and then all of a sudden he would just start walking away. All right, right in the middle of your talking. All right, not like, fuck you. You know, he just... started going, like you're supposed to be trailing after him. And so the Lawrence, and I get last 20 minutes, very important part of the story. And I grab him by the arm and go, Lawrence, stay here. And he shoves me. And he's just like, get your fucking hands off me. All right? I'm like, this fucker gonna touch me in my set? Fuck him.
I think Quentin was going to do him physical harm. I remember him lunging at Lawrence.
Get your fucking hands on me, kid. I go, fuck you, you fat fuck. You're fucking fired. Take your fat fucking ass off my fucking set.
I think I was holding Lawrence and Harvey was holding Quentin. It might have been vice versa. I don't remember, but I know that there was an effort made to keep them away from each other. Someone definitely would have got hurt.
I, boom, storm off the set this way. Lawrence, boom, storms up the set that way.
And I remember he left the set and he was walking down the middle of the street with cars coming by and everything.
the crew breaks out into applause. They brought us together, and then it's like we see each other, and we both kind of calm down a little bit now. It's like 20 minutes later. I'm sorry. Oh, no, kid, I'm sorry. You know, and it was just really nice and everything. And then he did this again and again. It was like, it was his schizophrenic nature. Now he was really sweet. Then he was just like, so kid, how about this? You know, we're all gonna go out. You know, me and the whole crew, we're all gonna go out and drink and have a good time. Kid, how about you? Me and you, we're gonna go out and we're gonna drink and we'll put this all behind us. You know. And I go, no, yeah, I just really feel like going out and drinking with Lawrence Tierney.
He wasn't supposed to drink, and we were all encouraged not to let him drink. So naturally, the first thing we did was take him out for drinks. I brought him to Musso and Frank's one time, and we were sitting at the bar, and we had many, many vodka tonics, and suddenly he says, I'm leaving. I gotta go to the bathroom. And so he wandered off, and didn't come back for quite some time, and we all wondered what happened to Lawrence? You know, where the hell is he? I heard a lot of automobiles out in front of the restaurant. They were all honking and all that. And a lot of commotion, you know, so I went and I looked out the windows, and there's Lawrence standing in the middle of the street with his drawers down and going like this. And there's cars just screeching to a halt and going around him and driving around him, and he was yelling at everyone and pointing at them. It was very strange.
He'd drop his pants in the parking lot and stuff, and introduce me, take me to bars and introduce me to the man who invented the yo-yo that lights up. Those were his mates. You go, okay.
I heard that he physically went through a wall at some friends of mine's house one night. Like the Incredible Hulk, he apparently just went through a kitchen wall into a dining room. I would love to have seen that.
He would call up, be in a bar, get drunk, call up the cops, there's a fight down here, everyone's going crazy. The cops would turn up and he'd beat up the cops.
If he was here right now, he would physically attack me. And I, you know, I annoyed him for some reason. I think everyone annoyed him, but me in particular, he did come after me once.
Sitting in the rehearsal room, and Lawrence Tierney was there. And Lawrence has scars all over his head, you know. He has a big head. And I remember sitting there looking at Eddie, and Eddie was looking at Lawrence like that. I said, what's with you and Lawrence? He said, I was just sitting there trying to work out if I'd put those scars there or not. I'm like, what? And there's a couple of stories there that go way back about that.
You know the guy that was in Reservoir Dogs, the old guy that just died?
Lawrence Tierney.
Lawrence Tierney. I had a fight with him in the parking lot back there behind this place in the 50s. You know? What happened, I get in a fight with him. I pulled up in the parking lot with a broad, and Lawrence Tierney was beating the shit out of his brother. He had him up against the wall and was slamming him in the wall, and the chick was with me said, hey Eddie, hey baby, what would you do to that guy? I said, man, I'd look like Sugar Ray Robinson on his ass, you know? So I swing on him, I punch on him, and I miss. I don't hit him right. My arm kind of goes around him. Have you ever been in fights? You know, you punch and you miss, and I don't get him with a full on the chin. I don't hit him right, you know. And he's a big guy. So in a couple of minutes, he's got my coat over my head, man. I'm really busting my mouth open. This is in the 50s.
This is way before Reservoir Dogs. You guys had a history. Did he remember you?
No.
The rumor has it that the cops actually took him to the state line and threw him across it. Yeah, he was such trouble. He's such trouble.
Before we started rehearsing, we had an informal barbecue at a place Harvey was leasing on the beach. Well, I had just seen a movie called The Devil Thumbs a Ride with this guy, who was Lawrence Tierney in the end. But I didn't know it was Lawrence Tierney. This was like 3 weeks before. I said, I wonder what happened to this prick. I go, this guy is so mean. He probably never worked again, but he's a good-looking guy. He can act, but he's just not one redeeming quality about the character, and he didn't care.
Have you ever seen the movie Devil Thumbs a Ride? That could be called the Lawrence Tierney story, all right? Because it's all about like some nice guy who's driving down the street, and Lawrence Tierney's hitchhiking on the side of the road, and you stop to pick him up. You're having a good day, and you're a nice guy, but because you bumped into Lawrence Tierney, he's gonna ruin your life. All right, from that moment on, your day's gonna be fucked and your life is going to be ruined while he's in your presence.
I end up inviting him to a barbecue at my house. And he says, okay, great. So I said, well, you know, we'll have a barbecue before we start shooting. It was like 2 weeks before we had to start shooting. I said, we'll have a barbecue and, you know, get to know each other a little bit and be great. He goes, great. That's fine. I leave. Next morning, 8 a.m., I get a phone call. Hello, I'm just getting up. He goes, yeah, it's Lawrence. What time should I be there? I go, no, I mean, you know, we'll have, I mean, before we start shooting, we'll get together. I mean, I got some things I got. No, what time? Come on, I got today. What time should I be there? The guy's like, you know, just already bullying me, right?
You never want to invite Lawrence over to your house because basically you're going to have a guest for like the next like 2 weeks until you actually have to forcibly call the cop.
So I go, okay, be here about noon. Well, where am I coming? So I give him the address of Malibu. He goes, is that, okay, well, I got to take the bus 5, the bus 96, to the bus 77, to the 367, and then I'll catch on the, I mean, it's like 16 buses he's got to take to get there. I don't know where he's coming from. So I'll be there at about 12:16. Pick me up at the bus station. And he's there with his Bermuda shorts on, you know, a Hawaiian shirt, all his toiletries, like some underwear and a shirt. You know, he's planning on staying a while. So he gets to the house. This is a true story. And I got a Cracker Barrel cheese and bread, and I'm cooking monster steaks. The guy eats all the bread. He eats the whole thing. He goes, you got any more of that cheese? I go, Lawrence, there's going to be a huge steak on your way, big salad, vegetables, the whole thing. Just wait a minute. He goes, he gets a big quart of juice, drinks the whole thing. Guy's amazing. People tell stories like this about me, so I can tell this story. People said this about me for years. I finally got a guy I can tell it about. So then he goes, hey, you got a nice place here. I said, well, it's not really mine, it's my folks' place. He said, yeah, but it's nice by the ocean. But you need some lawn furniture. And there's lawn furniture everywhere in the yard, everywhere. I go, Lawrence, look at this beautiful, you know, lawn furniture. It's all over. He says, yeah, but you need, you could use some more. You could use some more. You might have a party. I got some for you. I'm going to give it to you when we get to my house. And when we get to your house, he says, oh, yeah, the buses don't run late enough. Meanwhile, his nephew calls me up. He goes, hey, is my uncle there? I go, yeah, he's here. He says, don't let him use the phone. He'll call Alaska for 3 hours. He said, just keep an eye on him. He's a good-hearted guy. And he is a good-hearted guy. So the day progresses, the steaks are finished. You know, I've definitely told him there's no way I want the lawn furniture. So we eat the steaks, have a great time, and we end up, it's about time for him to go home. Next thing I see, he's in my bed asleep. Just out. Had a nice steak, you know, a couple of quarts of juice. He's out cold. Wait about 3 hours later, and he's like a soldier ready to go to war. He goes, all right, where are we going? What are we doing? I said, well, we're going home. I'm going to take you home. He goes, what? What, already? He goes, come on, it's like 6 o'clock. Come on, let's go out. Let's have fun. He wanted to go out and, you know, hang out. I go, I really got to go. I got stuff I got to do, Lawrence. I really do. But, you know, the next few days, we will. He goes, all right, fine. Be a Scrooge, you know, be a fucking crumb or whatever. So we get in the car, we heading at it. He goes, let's at least get some dessert. We have tiramisu. And when he's done eating the tiramisu, he takes the pewter vase from the center of the table. He goes, I'm going to wait for you out in the truck. He goes out to the truck. My buddy's with me. He goes, you know, you just took the vase off the table? I go, hey, let him have the vase. These guys are friends. So I tell the guys, I go, no, don't worry about it. It's all right. So we're heading over to his apartment on Hollywood Boulevard, and he looks at me. He goes, he says, well, at least come to my house. He says, because I've got some videotapes of some movies I did, and I want you to see them. So I go, great. I mean, that's what I want. I go, and by the way, you know, what's with the vase? He said, I didn't take a vase. I said, who said you took one? I said, what's with one? He said, I didn't take nothing. He says, come on, I want to give you them tapes. So we go to his house. He's got this apartment on Hollywood Boulevard. Goes up, he goes, hey, hang on a minute, so I'm going to bring you them tapes down here. So I'm waiting in the car on Hollywood Boulevard, and Lawrence Tierney comes down the elevator. looks at me with a shopping basket full of lawn furniture and goes, and here's that lawn furniture I told you about. Here's the tapes. I go, Lawrence, I told you I didn't want it. And he goes, well, what the fuck did you make me bring it down here for? And then he walked away. So, that's Lawrence Tierney, in a nutshell.
I used to come down here when in the 50s, and I'd see these guys in this old Buick with Iowa license plate and dust all over them, and I had that Jag, and I'd go by and I'd say, "Fucking tourists!" You know? One time I took a score that made a headline here in the paper, and it was the Bullocks, the old Bullocks. They had big jewelry thing, you know, and it was like in Straight Time. Did you see Straight Time?
A long time ago.
Where they smashed the cases and everything. And so the next day, the thing, it says, big robbery, 600,000 in ice. Well, in the 50s, early 50s, 600,000 was like millions now, you know. But the only problem is see, that was 600 grand retail. Jewelry is marked up 100% or more, you know, so really the wholesale value was around 300,000. And then a fence that you sell it to, he gives you 1/3 of it. That's the standard. So it's 100,000. So then you cut it with your two crime partners, so you wind up with about 35,000, you know, so it's definitely not a $600,000 score. Oh, one night here on this freeway, in 1957, I guess the spring of 57, there was a guy got out of the joint named Dizzy Davis. And I had a Jag at that time, one of those long, low, sleek Jags with a, you know, you've seen them, those old ones with a long hood and the mirrors on the thing. And we were coming in, it was about a little after midnight. In those days, the freeway was kind of empty. When we got by the interchange, I punched it, so I got it going about 100 down this freeway at night. I was going by everything, you know, shoot, shoot, shoot. And pretty soon, maybe about here, when I'm up there, I looked in the mirror and I saw those red lights, you know, behind me, and the chase was on. So I kept going, and when I got down here a ways, one of them come off Cahuenga, another one, and they came in front of me, and I went over to the left, and he was in front of me, and then all of a sudden I went right like a sports car will do, and I got off the ramp, and he couldn't make the turn. Under Highland, you know, where you go around and come back under, but I couldn't go under because I was going too fast. I'd spun out, and when I came out of it, I was on this side of the fence, and he was on that side of the fence, and we were looking at each other, you know, like this, and I turned up in the hills and got away. Car is deadly to the criminal because you have to have a driver's license, and and they got trips in New York, boom, you're ducking a subway, you're ducking a building. You know, you're gone. 6 chases, I've got away twice. I'll tell you another thing here. For a while, when in the 60s, they used to have what they call swinging singles apartments. This was the era when the baby boomers were all of a certain age, you know. I moved in there. I was not there long, but I was right over the freeway. See those windows right there on that apartment building? Right here, this one, this orange apartment building.
Oh, yeah.
I'd be not in this one here, but in this second one here, and I'd stand up in the window naked. And I'd tell my old lady, "Hey, baby, I'm fucking all Hollywood," you know? People would go by, and they'd look, they wouldn't know what they saw. They'd be gone so fast before they knew what happened, you know? I was in Folsom, no, I was in Quentin, and I filed a habeas corpus. They railroaded me. I was guilty, but they railroaded me. They perjured, and they did everything to get me, you know what I mean? They pulled out all the stops, and I got to be a pretty good lawyer, jailhouse lawyer. And finally I got to the federal court, and I got an order for an evidentiary hearing, you know, where we can put on evidence and prove it, and so they ordered me back to the to the county jail for a hearing. There's some old wino, some old white drunk, and this black kid, he bumped into this black kid, and this black kid punched him and lit him up, you know? And I didn't like that. I didn't say anything, you know? So they're saying, throw the clothes in the hamper and come out, file out. So I don't get in those crowds. I hang back, and this guy behind me he told me, hurry up, man. I told him, hey, I'm taking my time. And I ain't no old man either, motherfucker. So I lit him up, man. Boom, boom, boom. Blood went, a couple of them jumped me, but I got my licks in. So they took me and they put me in Siberia. They're gonna keep me in Siberia for, you know, I don't know, all the time I'm there. And while I'm in Siberia, I can't get any visits. I took a cup of water, the light bulbs are screened in up above. I took a paper cup of water, threw it up there and popped the bulb and got the bulb, tied my arm off and cut till I got squirting water. But then I put it in a cup. See, I put the blood in and I put water in it, you know. So it's looking, and then I pour it on my head, you know, and then I throw it on the walls. You know, I mean, it looks terrible when you see it, you know, oh my God. So they code me, boom, to the general hospital with the sirens and everything. And I'm a day there in the general hospital, and they moved me back to the new jail, and they put me in the hospital ward. You know, and that's how I got in the hospital ward. You know. I was up in the hole in San Quentin, and Carol Chessman, the red light bandit they executed, the death row was behind the hole. You know, the cells were back to back, and you could talk through the ventilators. And I knew him from the jail a little bit. I wasn't supposed to have anything to read in the hole but the Bible. That's all they'd allow you. And I can quote it to my own ends, like they say. The devil can quote scripture. I sure can, you know. You know, I can, you know. It's better to live in one small corner in the attic than in a wide house with a brawling woman. So Chessman sent me over this magazine, Argosy, and they had excerpted the first chapter of his book, Cell 2455, Death Row. It was just a chapter about a guy being executed. It blew my mind that a convict, much less one on death row, and it said on there that this was from a book that was going to be published in a few months. And that night, all of a sudden, it just came, well, if he can do it, why can't I do it? I'm not facing the death penalty. I mean, I got all the time in the world. You know? And it did take all the time in the world. It took 6 books that didn't get published, you know, plus over 17 years before I got published. I mean, you know, perseverance is one thing, but you know, some things are, you know, I didn't have anything better to do. You know, I believe in perseverance above, you know, everything. I think perseverance overcomes intelligence, overcomes luck, overcomes, you know, everything. You know, perseverance wins. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just driving around giving you a tour, you know what I mean, of everything I know about it.
Monte Hellman did his first film for me and did a number of other films with me. I remember specifically 2 Westerns that he did.
I was taught by Roger Corman that you don't do a budget, you decide how much you're going to make the picture for, and then you find a way to make it for that. And that's what we did. He said, I'll give you $75,000 for each of these 2 pictures. Come back when you're finished. And if you spend any more, it's out of your pocket. and we almost had to, because we had 3 days of rain on the first picture that we shot, and couldn't shoot, and so we were immediately behind budget, behind schedule before we even got started. So, but we still came out.
He made 2 Westerns that Jack Nicholson wrote, and Jack Nicholson starred in both of them, and Monte directed them. And they were very thoughtful, very intelligent Westerns, but very commercial as well. And I've always thought that is something that Monte knows how to do. He is a very good director, tending more towards the art film, but when pushed a little bit, he can make that film commercial.
I've always given my actors scripts except on Two Lane Blacktop, and for some reason I felt that was a special circumstance. Number one, because I was dealing with non-professional actors. They were professionals in the sense that they were singers or models or whatever, but they had not acted. And I thought that it might be beneficial, since we were forced to shoot in sequence. We started in Los Angeles and we drove all across country to North Carolina. And I decided it was a unique opportunity to try just giving them only so much information as they needed each day as we went along. And it worked for everybody except James. About halfway through, just went on strike. He says, I can't work this way. He says, I won't shoot anymore unless you give me the script. And so I gave him the script, and he didn't read it.
I'd always been a big fan of Monte Hellman. As much as everyone likes Two Lane Blacktop, my favorite Monte Hellman movie is Ride in the Whirlwind. It's like, so far, the only like real big film piece I've ever written about another movie is I wrote for Sight and Sound magazine a whole piece on Ride in the Whirlwind.
Ride in the Whirlwind, we shot completely out of sequence, even to the extent that we would have the camera set up for a shot, and I would know I could use that same angle in 3 or 4 different scenes, and we would shoot that angle in 4 different scenes, and then we'd move the camera because it was a big deal to move the camera. And so we just did everything we could to be as economical as possible. And there's one scene in Ride in the Whirlwind where we used a dolly. And I said, wow, this is our dolly shot, you know? We've got one. And, you know, it was kind of like, see, I can do a dolly shot, but we didn't have the luxury of doing it very much. I think what I do is I make movies for myself as an audience. Not that I make movies that I don't want anybody else to see, but as an audience, I react in a certain way to movies, and that is I create my own movie as I'm watching a movie, and so sometimes I can leave a movie and not be able to tell you what the story was about, because I've had an experience. I have a real kind of like, I take a little dream, I take a little trip while watching a movie, and if it's a good movie, I can see it again and again because I'll keep seeing different things in it. And so I want an audience to participate. I want them to have their own trip, and I don't care if it's the same as my trip. I just want them to have a good trip with it. And so I don't mind if there's little gaps, because I want them to fill in those gaps.
Well, the first time I met Quentin, I had heard of him, and I had heard that he'd made a film that won the Cannes Film Festival, but I had not seen it. I had not seen any of his films. And I was invited to a screening of Coffee and Foxy Brown at a theater here in LA, and to do a personal appearance. And he came up to me in the lobby and somebody introduced us, and he was just so enthusiastic. I was immediately taken with him as a personality. He's such a likable guy. And he had his arms full of LP record albums with the soundtrack from Foxy Brown, and he had posters and he wanted me to autograph them for him and everything. So I was really quite flattered, because I knew he just won the Cannes Film Festival Award. And he was so enthusiastic about Coffee. He said, man, you write such a great dialogue. And then he quoted a line of dialogue from the movie, which he thought was such a great line of dialogue. And it was fascinating because it was a particularly important line of dialogue that the average viewer wouldn't even notice as being important, but that I had given a lot of careful thought to, and it was very important. So I thought, wow, you know, this guy's really astute. He's a really smart guy. I have given some thought to it because other people have observed the kind of rhythm and kind of pacing in my dialogue. And I think if I can put it to anything, it's maybe my background in music, where music is an art form that exists in time the same way a film does. And you have to know when to go slow and when to speed up, when to stop. And pacing to me is, if I'm good at anything, I'm good at that. And pacing within a dialogue scene is the same as pacing within a whole film. You have to have moments of speed, moments of slowing down. My first big hit, and the film that introduced Pam Grier, was a movie called The Big Dollhouse. It was a women in prison story, totally fantastic, bananas story laid in the Philippines. And Pam Grier practically stole the show, and when I first interviewed her, she had never done anything but a walk-on on a Russ Meyer movie. But I just was struck by her presence and her authority and cast her in a leading role, which was not written for a black woman. It didn't specify. I was interviewing actresses of all types for that. I didn't want to make everybody white, necessarily. But it turned out to be the most profitable independent picture ever made up until that time. It was a huge hit and just spawned a whole genre of women in prison films. Then I did a sequel to that the following year, which did very well, but not that big, and because there'd been so many imitations in between. And from that, I got the opportunity to do Coffee, and it was an assignment. The head of production at AIP, Larry Gordon, had been offered Cleopatra Jones, and he wanted to do it, but the producer took it away from him because he got a better deal from Warner Brothers. So Larry wanted revenge, see? So he got me in, and he thought Pam Grier could do it, and so did I. And the studio, we had to persuade them that Pam Grier could do it. They weren't sure. And so I wrote the script specifically for her. And it turned out to be their biggest hit of the year and a huge success. And it actually climbed to #1 in the box office. Instead of, most exploitation movies would open #1 if they had a lot of advertising, then they would fall off. But it climbed from word of mouth because AIP didn't spend very much money on advertising. And Cleopatra Jones, Warner Brothers spent a lot of money on advertising, and they grossed similar amounts, but Coffee was much more profitable. In the character of Coffee and Foxy Brown, which was originally supposed to be a sequel with the same character, I wanted to create a character who did not have any special talents, was not like a James Bond female, not like Cleopatra Jones, not like Charlie's Angels. A character who was a woman that anybody could say, that could be me. And she wins out over her adversaries by her wits and by using sexuality as a weapon against the men. And if she gets in jeopardy, she has to get herself out of it. There's no cavalry coming to the rescue. And that's what I worked on with that character. And I think that's what really grabs people in a way that these superheroines don't. And Pam was able to do that. And I couldn't imagine another actress, at least at that time, who could have handled that. And it had to be a black woman. I felt very strongly that there'd be you couldn't do that with a white woman character. People have asked me, like, how do you learn how to write dialogue for black characters? Well, I think that there's not that much difference, really. And in my case, the actors really helped me a lot with just the style of presenting the dialogue. But otherwise, these are just universal things that everybody feels and everybody understands. Coffee was one of the first black films to show that there could be a crossover audience. At that time, the studios they had a very, very limited budget for any so-called black film because they felt at that price, if they got the black audience, they'd have a profitable movie, but they couldn't expect anything more than that. So they had this limit on the budget. And Coffee showed that there was the possibility of attracting a huge white audience as well as the black audience. And it was one of the first crossover movies. And if there's anything that I can say today that I'm proud of about that, I'm proud that I helped bring black characters and black lifestyle and black actors into the mainstream of films. Because what put an end to blaxploitation movies was that fact that there was an audience for black characters, and now you hardly can see a movie without black characters and Asians, and that was a big change, and I'm very happy about that.
You know, you look for movies. I love seeing small independent movies because there's going to be layers. You won't be bombarded with hype and subterfuge with some of the big, fuzzy buzzy movies. So there was this movie called Reservoir Dogs, and I'm saying, I know what that means, because I am a reservoir dog. Those are like dogs that live in a junkyard dogs. They fight the hardest, they scrap the hardest, they appreciate food, they hide their food. They're just they're the ones who have suffered the most, who understand what life and food and survival really means. My friends are in New York. They've gone to see this movie, right? And everybody's wearing the shark skin suits, and you know, everyone's really flying dope. And Harvey Keitel, I have been a Harvey Keitel fan since, you know, he and Robert De Niro have worked together for many, many, many years. I love him, man. He's fabulous, and I got a chance to work with him. But anyway, so they're watching this movie, and they're talking about, you know, they're going through the dialogue, they're in the car, and all of a sudden, one of the actors says, you know, I really love this movie about this Pam Grier, you know, she's like this tough chick, and like all my friends just like almost stood up and testified in the middle of the movie, and they ran out to call me, Pam, guess what? They mentioned you in Reservoir Dogs, and I said, no, beep, you know, wow, this is fantastic. So I went to see it right after that. And I was like, wow, you know, and of course, I found out through the Vine about this director, this filmmaker who, you know, had a great, I guess, an affinity for my work and for my soul, and just had to put me in that scene. He just thought it was fitting, and of course, you know, I'm gonna ask Quentin later, and he told me about it, and I was just like, wow, you know, I thought, for anything, you know, if you're mentioning anything, that's in the scene in Reservoir Dogs. That's when you made it, you know. That's when you're all that, you know. I thought that was a great moment, and it's very endearing and moving.
Roger Corman's whole aesthetic, it was very influential to me. My dream in my life was to be to someday was like to make a movie for Roger Corman when I was young, to approach him in a parking lot and just say, oh, let me do a women in prison movie. I'll make the greatest women in prison movie ever made. You know, let me do a biker movie. You know, to edit trailers for Roger Corman would have been like an honor beyond all honors. And I'd heard a French critic describe. There's two critics described two different films, and I'll say one of them when we get to them. Two critics had once described the aesthetic of two different filmmakers, and when I heard their version of the aesthetic, I was like, that's what I want to do.
My father was an engineer, and I went to college, to Stanford, as an engineering major, feeling that I would follow in his footsteps. It wasn't until my senior year that I realized engineering was not for me, and I was interested in films. But I could start over and take another major and spend an extra year in college, or I could just graduate. I felt, I just want to get out of here, I will graduate. The only job I could get, because Hollywood was a very tough place to get a job in those days, was as a messenger at Fox. Started as a messenger, worked my way up to a story analyst, and then really just wanted to go to Europe, and I'd had some time on the GI Bill, so I went to Oxford on the GI Bill, traveled around Europe, came back, got a job as a literary agent, and wrote and sold my own script. And I offered to work for the producer for nothing as associate producer, to learn and to get the credit. So when the picture was over, I was able to say I was a writer-producer. I raised $12,000, partially from my sale of the script and partially from guys I'd gone to school with, and made Monster from the Ocean Floor for $12,000 plus a little money in deferments, and I never looked back. I actually have lost count of how many films I've produced. I know a little bit more about how many I've directed. I think I've directed a little bit less than 60, maybe 57, 58 films, something like that. As to how many films I've produced, I don't even know myself, because sometimes I've done co-productions overseas, and whether I should count those or not. But assuming I count the ones in which I'm co-producer or producing with somebody else, I think it's around 450 or a little more. We're shooting at the moment, and so it'll go up one more within a couple of weeks. These days, I'm known mostly as a producer, but when I was primarily a director, which was the late 50s and through the 60s up until around 1970 or so, I was considered okay, particularly in Europe. The French New Wave critics, and some of them became directors, picked up on my work before the critics in the United States. And from Paris to London, the English critics wrote good things about it. And eventually, a couple of American critics said, okay, this guy's okay. If I were talking to a young filmmaker who had started and was interested in how his career was going to progress, how he would guide his career, I would say the #1 rule is to do your best on every project. When I started, I knew we were all doing essentially low-budget B pictures. Now, if you're brilliant, you may jump to a major film on your first try or your second try, but normally you do a number of films and work up. Assuming you're on that path, I would say turn down the absolute losers. Don't get involved in anything that you know is going to be bad. But if it has any chance, do the film and do it the best you can. The guys I knew who would take a low-budget film and say, well, it's just a cheap film, I'm going to knock it off and get the money, those guys are out of the business today. The ones who took a low-budget film that seemed to have limited potential, but who said, I will make the best film on this subject I possibly can, those are the ones who have built their careers.
Some French critic described Roger Corman's movies as like a pathetic cry from the a desperate cry from the heart of a pathetic fast food culture. I go, hey, I like that.
Lionel White, an American mystery novelist who wrote The Killing and a lot of other things, had written a kidnapping novel called A Snatch. And it was published in France by Série Noir, Gallimard. And a little crook in Paris read it and said, this thing's a blueprint. It tells you exactly what to do. It says, kidnap a baby because a baby can't identify you. It told them how to get the ransom money. It said, be sure to return the child unharmed, because if you just take money, they'll eventually stop looking for you. But if you kill the kid, they'll never stop looking for you. So he took this book to some friends and said, look, we can do it. And they did it. And it was the crime of the century in France. And they stole the Peugeot heir, the Peugeot automobile. They stole the baby. They did everything, just like the book said. Got the ransom, returned the baby. Everything was fine. They ran out of book. Within a few weeks, they were all arrested. They were essentially just dumb little guys. You know, one of them is buying cars. He's buying fur coats for his girlfriend. One of them is getting drunk in a bar and saying, you know, the Peugeot kidnapping. You know, who could tell you something about the Peugeot kidnapping? You know, and I've always said they should have taken some of the ransom money and hired Lionel White to write a sequel in which they get away.
I suppose you really have to start with Hammett and Chandler. Very quickly after the Second World War, you get a number of writers like David Goodis and Jim Thompson who are responding to the political and cultural atmosphere. A number of things influenced that. The Cold War, primarily, the fear of of atomic weaponry, a permanent wartime economy, things like that, which created pretty much a sort of paranoia in the culture, which people like Thompson and Goodis and other writers responded to. And I think that Thompson, Goodis, Himes, those are like the primary people, I think, in the post-war era. Then you get a whole other type of fiction. You get the writers that come out of the Vietnam era. And there are a lot of similarities, really, between those early writers like James Crumley and George V. Higgins, and the writers who wrote about Vietnam, like Michael Hare and Gustav Hausford and people like that. So, and that's not only, well, it's not really in terms of their narrative, but like what sort of feeds into the narrative.
and the way they're sort of describing things, and that sort of hard-boiled attitude that they have towards life, and it's sort of slightly cynical. So they're calling on writers and a sort of cultural mix that they're living in at the time, but also they're referring back to people like Chandler and Hammett. And then, I mean, Thompson and people like that are sort of go through a lull and aren't really rediscovered until probably the early 80s, when they go through a revival of sorts. But yeah, dialogue, getting the dialogue right is like an essential part of film noir from the 80s through the 90s to the present.
The fact is that nobody's dialogue is real. I mean, Elmore Leonard's and George V. Higgins and me or anybody, it's all stylized. But the stylization is you stylize to look real. But with Higgins, his stylization was toward transcript, so that if you're reading a book of his, it's as though you're reading a transcript, therefore that must be what they said. I'm not going to try to characterize mine, but Leonard, what Leonard does is just keep circling in the dialogue the same as he keeps circling in the narration. So that looseness and an apparent lack of direction is what makes it seem as though that's real, that's what's going on.
Almost every crime writer goes to Hollywood at some point, or has gone to Hollywood at some point, because the money is incredible, and it's sort of, you know, you have to do Hollywood. You have to go there and fight this evil force called Hollywood and succeed or not succeed.
Stanley Kubrick and Jim Thompson met at an extremely low point in Thompson's life. He had just come off of one of the strongest and most successful streaks of his life. In roughly a 2.5-year period, he wrote or published, I think, about 14 new novels. But his editor at Lion Books, Arnold Haino, had just left. The paperback market was drying up for him, and to a certain extent for everybody. So there's a real way in which you could say that Stanley Kubrick rescued Jim Thompson. I think there's also a way in which you can say that Jim Thompson rescued Stanley Kubrick. To play film critic for a minute, Kubrick's prior film to The Killing is The Killer's Kiss, and it's a brilliant film visually and in almost every other way except for the screenplay. And in my opinion, it really doesn't have a screenplay. And I think what Thompson gave Kubrick in the Killing was a taut and refined and elegant screenplay steeped in the American vernacular.
That film, I think, influenced a lot of future films, including films like Reservoir Dogs. The way it concentrated on character, the way the time overlapped, the way the narrative structure of it. There were a lot of aspects to that film which you can later see in film noir of the 1990s.
I grew up in the cold, dark Northeast, and you spend a lot of winters with a lot of snowballs, and the best snowball has a stone in it. And Parker talks like that. All of his snowballs have stones in them. And that, what Point Blank didn't quite do that. Point Blank was more ornate and poetic. But it went its way. It went very well in its way.
At that time, this is 1966. I went out there to do Point Blank, and we were looking. I mean, what was going on then? It was Fellini and Bergman were at their peak, and the whole French New Wave was going. It was tremendous, and that burst into, that really translated in America into the 70s. I mean, the 70s, which is a great period in American movies, was really a result of that influence coming from Europe.
yeah, the thrillers or film noirs or whatever you want to call them, I think, you know, for anybody who's interested in having to say anything at all, this is a great conveyor belt. I mean, one, the stories are good. One's always intrigued as to know what's going to happen. But more importantly, you can offer a kind of autopsy of society as it is when you're making that film. In the same way as with Carter, you know, one was actually examining the kind of corrupt soul of my own country, actually, which I knew was there, which I think a lot of the populace were denying, and you were able to explore that.
There are times when it's absolutely on your side. It's very in your interest to have no money. Well, if you're making your first film, by definition, you don't have very much money. So the idea that you make this rather sort of abrupt, violent film, which doesn't have long, expensive elements in, it's sort of common sense. It's also close to the street, so I guess you can make them cheaper than many films. You know, and the melodrama sustains the lack of production values.
Noir became a big industry in the 1990s. When you walk into a bookshop and you'd see, you know, just hundreds of books, you know, by writers, you know, you've never heard of, and everybody, you know, seems to have written a crime novel. And I think a lot of the subversiveness has been written out of it, really. And I think that goes for film noir as well. But you do get, I think it's still possible to you know, be subversive within the genre. And you get, you know, writers, it's very hard to sustain, though. So you get writers who write, you know, 1, 2, 3 really great novels, maybe 4 novels, and then, you know, hit a sort of dry patch. And in terms of filmmaking, well, there's not a lot, but there's, you know, every once in a while you see a great example of film noir that, you know, it reminds you that it can still be done. It can, because essentially it's still, you know, at its best, it still is a genre that criticizes the culture, that shows the culture, the sort of contradictions within the culture.
I think that the character of Jack Carter is ruthless. He's a psychopath, and he acts like a psychopath. And I think my duty as a filmmaker was to show him acting in just that way. I think that you know, that in a sense, the tipping of the body over the high-rise was important for me, because normally gangland violence happens internally, so it happens within the gangs themselves, and no one really gives too much, you know, it's their affair, and and as long as it's internal and doesn't actually then spread out into the general populace, and that nobody else is in danger, no one gets shot or accidentally or whatever. In this instance, literally, with the guy being tipped over, he lands on some innocent people in a car. And that, I think, was what I was trying to say, is that it does matter, actually, because there always is liable to spill over into the general populace. And anyway, if you, even within the society, if you've got these kind of gangland situations going on, it does indicate something else about the society in general. So I don't think that one can regard it as happening just in an obscure way and outside of our general orbit of what's going on for all of us, if that makes any sense at all.
Thompson's novels have a very beautiful sense of the American vernacular. He clearly loved the way Americans talked. He loved American tall tales. He loved the way people particularly talked about work and at work and about the jobs that they do. And he also had a very kind of sly, kind of comic sense. I mean, there's a way in which many of Thompson's novels, particularly the first-person novels, are people talking out of both sides of their mouths at once to two different audiences. as it were. You know, talking to the person that they might happen to be having dinner with that moment, and then kind of slyly nodding and winking towards the reader at how dumb that person might be. There's also an element of Thompson's dialogue that I think that Quentin Tarantino picks up for Reservoir Dogs, and that's the sense of dialogue as kind of evasive chatter, of dialogue as a way of not talking and not saying anything. And I think that one of the real, you know, achievements of Reservoir Dogs is the elaborate ways over and over again all those men kind of avoid talking to one another.
We took the sort of Hitchcock view that you know, you write the script and then you put in the dialogue, rather than what generally happens. You know, they write the dialogue and then they set it to pictures, and it was. I think we were actually very influenced by Pinter at the time, and yeah, very influenced by Pinter. And the dialogue is very Pinteresque, really, with those you know, laconic, with those pauses, and Lee was very good at handling that stuff. There was one scene, you know, for instance, after the shooting of the bed, when he's depleted, you know, and it's a kind of sexual connotations there, you know, he shoots the bed and then you know, he slumps down and he's got this, you know, empty gun hanging down there, and the scene which followed it was where he interrogates his wife about Reese. Where is he? You know, he sends you money. Who brings it? Where does it come? Once a month? And so after we shot that scene, we started. I said, okay, let's rehearse this next scene, which was a really simple genre scene. You know, where you question about the guy you're trying to get to, and so we started to rehearse it. Sharon Acker was the actress. She said her line and waited, and Lee didn't reply. He just sat there. So she then said her next line, you know, and still he didn't respond. I saw immediately what he was saying, you know, that he was in this depleted state. He couldn't answer these questions, you know. So I quickly rewrote it, the scene, minutes before we shot it, so that she was answering unasked questions. So she'd say, the money, the guy brings it once a month. Reese, I haven't seen him for months, you know. And he just sat there. And so it transformed the scene from being a standard sort of genre scene, you know, bread and butter scene, into something extraordinary. And that was Lee, really. That wasn't me, it was Lee who did that. And it was typical of him as an actor that he would never discuss things or argue or make suggestions. He would just make a gesture like that. He would just do something and then left it to you to figure it out whether you wanted it or not. You know, it was extraordinary.
If I were approached by a screenwriter saying, I'm going to adapt this book of yours, and what do you have to say to me? Actually, I've said this a couple of times, and it's what I would say, which is, don't try to be funny. You're a human being, don't worry, you're funny. You do your very level best to be serious, you'll come out funny. Because the image that I've always used is, there is nothing funnier on earth than a completely angry man changing a flat tire. He's hot, he's sweaty, he's got dirt on his head, he's fighting the thing and everything. And as soon as he sees you across the street, amused by him, and plays to you, he stops being funny. So the advice is, never try to be funny.
Since I have no visual training at all, and I think of myself as being visually illiterate, I mean, I would have thought the quality in my films was to do with language and character. I don't quite know, it's hard to take credit for it, since, I mean, I would think it came out of the writing. If you write in a certain way, you create you're bound to create a situation that ends up in some strong image. It wouldn't surprise me if you wrote a different kind of film. You know, particularly as I was brought up on sort of Howard Hawks' melodramas, these very, very strong dramas. And when you transpose them into modern life, I guess that's what you come up with. But I can't claim, I don't set out to do that. Maybe the cameramen, maybe confronted with a sort of lurid style, maybe they realize they have to rise to that. And you can tell when the drama has to be at a certain height. You know, you can't make the Maltese Falcon on that level, you have to make it on that level. It just doesn't mean, you know, it doesn't work like that. So, you know, first Hammett wrote it, I mean, and then Huston directed it to be on that level. And that's true of many noir films, or the good ones. So you're always aiming for that very, very powerful, heightened state.
We were the first to last, the only movie to ever film in that warehouse. The warehouse was originally a mortuary, but the production designer, David Wasco, was like, geez, it's a mortuary. Why dress it as, you know, all kinds of tons of crates? Why don't we take what's already existing and add to it? Add a hearse, a couple of upright coffins, and voila, we have ourselves a mortuary that you can't tell. Is it closed for repairs, or are they on vacation? What's going on? And it just left a nice element to it. Look at the tubes and the wires. I mean, it's an actual embalming room with, I don't know, 40-year-old tubes. They're pretty gross, but it worked well for the scene.
I had a connection with this hippie chick up in Santa Cruz, and all my friends knew it. And they give me a call and they say, hey, Freddie.
This is up right above the warehouse in the mortuary. I mean, it just was like, wow, we need an apartment. And David Wasco went, there's some rooms upstairs, let's go look up there. And it's like, well, it sure is ugly, all these white walls. And I was like, well, they don't have to be white, let's make them blue. And then, I mean, here you can see in this photo, it's pretty cool with Quentin already. Probably a month before we filmed the scene, but there he is, already got it in his mind how he can look out the window and wow, we can shoot a scene of the car sitting across the street from here, and there's a liquor store across the street, and you have to get releases on things that are featured in movies. And the liquor store, the way we got the release on them was I made sure that we bought our off-the-record wrap beers for every night from that liquor store. I ate at Johnny's for about 3 days in a row and really got to scope out how busy were these people, when did they really close as opposed to what they said on the door, because the sign made it sound like they were just open, you know, 24 hours a day. And actually by being there I could see that Saturday night was a night where they closed because it's at the Wilshire Fairfax area and it gets kind of dead, you know, by about sunset. So I knew they closed at 6 p.m. contrary to what their sign said. And so then I was able to go back, talk to the manager, go, okay, here's when we'd like to do our movie. It's on a Saturday night and we would be out of your restaurant by Sunday morning at 6 a.m. when you're ready to open for business. And so in a 12-hour window, we were able to shoot the scene and clear it out. And actually, it was like, it was the very last day of the whole movie.
This is a very weird situation. Because I don't know if you remember back in '86, there was a major fucking drought.
The Lodge, yeah, it's on Lancashire Boulevard in the valley. And what can I say? It's a gay bar. It's a gay bar. I didn't know that when I walked in to scout it. I was just looking for a bar. Somebody on the crew said, Billy, you might check a place called The Lodge. And I was like, okay. And I went into The Lodge, and everybody certainly seemed friendly enough. And I sat there and, hey, I'm Billy, and I'm working on this art film. It's called Reservoir Dogs.
And then that got to be a pain in the ass. People call me on the phone all the fucking time. I couldn't even run a fucking tape without 6 fucking phone calls interrupting me.
I think my big location budget on this was around $28,000. And considering it was a 24-day movie shot on 4 6-day weeks, and Sundays off to catch your breath, do your laundry before you dove back in for another 6 days, 18 hours a day. That was fun. It was filmmaking at its finest.
Reservoir Dogs figures. I was having dinner with Mark Carrington, who was doing work for Artisan at the time. He started talking to me about Reservoir Dogs, and he wanted to know if I was interested in doing it. Yeah, if the action figure category is open, I'm definitely interested in doing it. He told me it was, and we got started on the project.
Our product line was designed to be 12-inch scale, 1/6 scale, however way you want to call it. With the cloth clothing, very authentic, lots of detail, lots of accessories.
Some of the enticement in working on a project like Reservoir Dogs was just, the rawness and the intensity of the movie, and how we were trying to kind of express that in the figures.
Our Quentin Tarantino figure, Mr. Brown, the interesting thing about this figure is originally he wasn't going to be in the line. Our licensing contact at Artisan, Farrell, came to us and said, hey, Quentin wants in. He wants a figure. Can you guys make one of them? And so we went ahead and started sculpting them, and well, here we got Michael Madsen as Mr. Blonde. One of the interesting things about Michael Madsen is he was really into the project himself. He actually has a statue in his house, a bronze statue of his house, of him in this character.
But to me, a lot of the movie was about these intense scenes that were shot throughout the film, and kind of, wanted to relate that to the toys.
And we made 2 versions, the before and after. Bloody head, hole out the back too, and he loved it, and he got approved, and as a matter of fact he got moved into the first assortment because it got done so quickly. We actually did 2 versions of the Marvin Nash head. You can switch them out like the Quentin Tarantino, a before and after.
I think one of the things that Quentin Tarantino did when he made the movies was make these intense scenes that just seemed perfect in my eyes for toy product.
We have a set production period. We produce our items and then we go on and never make them again.
The time frame that it took to kind of get Reservoir Dogs from A to Z was, I'd say, a month, just making sure everything was cool and solidified with Artisan on getting the legal end done. 2 months tops, I think, on getting the sculpts done and everything. Then after we get the approval process done, which went very quick again, which took about a week or 2 weeks, we're in Hong Kong. We're making the molds and everything. The molds and the first shots and everything takes about 60 to 90 days, depending. Then after that, we get the paint masks done, which is the paint applications on the toys. That's another 2 weeks. Run production for 3 weeks, on the water for 2 weeks, to your local toy store.
The entire program from beginning to end was probably about 6 months to produce, market, ship, sell, and have out in the marketplace.